7:29. Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council Public Workshop. The date is August 2nd, 2023. The time is 7:30 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin. Here. Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
Mayor Vagianos.
Here. Will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No, it's okay. And will you all please join us in a moment of silence? We lost our Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, who dedicated her entire life to public service for the state of New Jersey. Thank you all so much. And now, the council, will you all join us in the well as we give thanks to some very important people. Good evening. This past Saturday, many of us were on hand at Graydon Pool in what was a day that I hope will never repeat itself. I will tell you that sitting on this council, I was moved and impressed by the well-oiled machine of village staff. For those of you who are unaware, there was a report of a missing child at Graydon Pool. I get chills as I think about that. When I got there, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of village employees moving like a well-trained, well-oiled machine to learn ultimately that there was no child missing. But they left no stone unturned. And it was the fire department that was diving with special equipment, our dive team, to ensure that there was no child in the pool. There was the police department that was checking every person who came to Graydon that day to make sure that no one was in the pool. And most importantly, there was the pool staff who was there every moment, who reported this, not knowing if there was someone in the pool, but they had been trained so well. And I was there with village manager Keith Kasmark, and we were so impressed. We stayed in a corner because there was nothing we could add to what you all were doing. And we want to take a moment to thank every single person who had a hand in this. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, and I count myself in that grouping of those who are unfamiliar, the list of people who were involved in this is long because everybody helped. And I'm going to begin right now. And it begins at the top with Nancy Bigos, our Director of Parks and Recreation, Steve Diamond, our pool manager. You got a lot of applause coming, just so you know. Sarah Butensky. Who, for those of you who don't know, was the young woman who was the shift manager who made the call to get the police and fire department there not knowing if someone was there, and she basically called in the Marines. And it was very impressive that she had the fortitude to do that. Thank you so much, Sarah. But I will continue. Maureen Lynch, our badge and security manager. Emily Buchert, our badge and security worker. Our waterfront lifeguards, for whom we can never thank you enough. Mick Barbie, Alex Bogish, Georgia Canty, Jack Cassavant, Ethan Kernishaw, Ava Fitz, Tessa Florida, Will Ginch, Ava Hutchinson, Logan Canistron, Caitlin Kinney, Ian McCollum, John Morley, Javid Murskloff, Ryan Phelan, David Patolsky, Oleski Sherbachev, and Joshua Tamioka. Let's give everyone a big round of applause. There's a page 2 to this list. And now we will thank all the members of the Ridgewood Fire Department who participated in this. Chief John Judge, who coordinated the entire search effort. Lieutenant Jordan Zales, Lieutenant Jason Kane, firefighter Tim Bombase, firefighter Jim Kakalevsky, firefighter Brian Kelly, firefighter Dane Knudsen, firefighter Chris Mead, firefighter Matt Musicant, firefighter Chris Wolfstern, firefighter Shelby Taylor, firefighter Michael Rohrman, firefighter Kurt Harba, firefighter Jason Jacoby. Let's all give them a round of applause. The Special Operations Section of Ridgewood Emergency Services, Captain Matthew Hendrickson, Lieutenant Vikram Delmaya, Medical Director Dr. Bob Lahita, Special Operations members, EMT Stephen Chisea, Mason Freeman, James Alton, Rahil Bhatia, Mark Timoshenko. Let's give them a round of applause. And the Police Department, Chief Forrest Lyons, Lieutenant Heath James, Sergeant Mike Lembo, Detective Doug Henke, Detective Stephen Cummings, Officer Mike Karcher, Officer Shane Broglia, Officer Hector Perez, Officer Francisco Santiago, Officer Colin Donnelly. Let's give them a round of applause. And finally, on standby, the Valley Hospital paramedics, who gratefully were not needed that day, but they were ready. Sue Bielefeld, Terry Reese, Joseph Ventrella, Dave Gordon. Let's give them all a round of applause. You all did good. You all made us all proud. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. Come on, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody. You guys did a terrific job. Thank you. Thank you all. Everyone. Every single one. Thank you. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Nice time. Thank you. Thank you. I'm coming. And a very special thanks to Village Clerk Heather Mailander, who put this whole thing together for us. Thank you so much, Heather. We really appreciate it. And now, we will go to public comment. Public comment is now open.
Like it being set up.
Oh, sorry, too late. No, kidding.
Is the mic on? Yeah.
Is the green light on?
Fretra De Silva,
Yeah, there you go.
521 West Saddle River Road. Mine is a carryover comment from the last meeting I attended. I wasn't able to speak at the end of the meeting. It was after the consultant had spoken regarding the Shetler property. And my only comment there, or what I really wanted to say that evening, was that I was quite disappointed. In a way, I was embarrassed. I was disappointed and embarrassed that we as a village had put forth a presentation that wasn't based on true investigation, exhaustive investigation into facts, and that was written in a manner that explained the reasoning behind what was called the analysis. Maybe afterwards, the council has gone back to the consultant and asked for more detail, but that evening that we spent listening for a couple of hours was only based on a few conversations, reading a report that we all had read, and it was just very disappointing. And that's what I wanted to say that evening, and so I came back to say it tonight. I hope that you will, if we're continuing to work with that consultant, that you will ask that he look into more specifically some of the evidence or information, not just reading the reports that have already been produced, and speaking with current residents and making one call to SHPO. I would expect more for what we're paying and for what we're talking about. This is property that is valuable to the village. And the other comment that I wanted to make was I believe and I hope that the council will continue to consult with the historic consultants and experts that are available in Bergen County and at the state before taking action with regards to the Shetler property. I realize that we've received funding from Bergen County and that this is designated as a state historic property, so we need approvals from the state. And I just want to make sure, I want to encourage the village council and the lawyer for the village council to make sure you're in communication to the degree that is appropriate with the state and with Bergen County before we take action, not after, but before we take action with regards to that property. I don't believe any applications are filed that I'm aware of. Maybe they are, but I hope that we do that and we do it in the order that's required. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fretra, and thank you for coming back to give us your comments.
Good evening, Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. I'm just going to read a statement from Ann Loving, who could not be here this evening. Her address is 342 South Irving Street. At the July 19th, 2023 public meeting, Councilwoman Reynolds indicated that a discussion item this week will address the inclusion of all public comments at the end of each meeting, regardless of the hour. Since January of this year, it has been commonplace for the mayor to cut off public comments from citizens in the room, as well as those at home on the phone. This has happened with the consent of all elected officials except Councilwoman Reynolds. I am so relieved that Councilwoman Reynolds has managed to get this on the agenda as a discussion item, and I trust that moving forward, all public comments will be permitted. Silencing the voices of concerned residents flies in the face of good governance. Thank you, and she's hoping that this is an agenda item or will be discussed at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, Ann. Anyone else? We have one person on hybrid access. I believe it's Denise Lima. Denise, you're on mute.
Not anymore.
No, you're not.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for giving us time to speak today. Few things first. I want to say thank you to the new village manager. It's amazing how visible he is in the community, trying to get acclimated, engaging with folks, responding on emails. So really appreciate that new, fresh response to everybody. A little bit about parks and recs. You know, I noticed that we have no picnic tables in any of the Ridgewood parks like Van Ness or It would be really good to have one or two in each of the parks. People can
Denise,
sit, people-
Denise, there was some
Yep.
static. Could you repeat what you just said? Because we didn't hear it. I'm so sorry.
Yep, let me just talk about parks and recs.
Yep.
Yep, so it would be great to have picnic tables in some of the parks. So people can sit, people can picnic, people can play games, play backgammon, play checkers, you know, sit at a more leisurely pace than just having benches and seats that, you know, are a little bit uncomfortable to eat at. I find it something like we're missing. There's not even benches at Looning. So it's really hard for people to really enjoy the park area if there's nowhere to really sit. I know they're expensive, so maybe we pick and choose which parks we have that at. I just want to move on to, again, since a lot of people were out, and there's been a flurry, I think, of emails being sent to the village council and the village manager, again, about not being able to speak. You know, we heard, Paul, from you, you know, when you first started, my biggest goal for the council is to give the council back to the community. The council is not as open to the needs of the community, and it's something you wanted to change. And so, you know, we're really trying to understand how to embrace that because we don't really feel that that's what's happening, and that people are listening to everybody's opinion about Shedler. I echo what was said about the concerning disappointingness of the consultants. I'd sent, again, an email talking about several items on the resume of the consultant that, as I explored and did some due diligence, the people from the T. Thomas Fortune, you know, are not aware of him. The Montclair Planning Board, you know, released him early. The mayor of Paul Muir, the mayor of Clinton, in fact, is not the mayor of Clinton. He's the mayor of Bethlehem, New Jersey, and he confirmed he's not aware of Mr. Primavera. On the resume is about Patterson. All the people, the historic designation, the people for Hincliffe, the museum directors, all people I know, reached out to all of them. They're not aware. Lucy the Elephant, sent you the comments from the director of education. Not aware, not working on anything with Lucy the Elephant. So there's so many claims that are happening that it's really kind of concerning, including the moving of the house, where I don't see any expertise. He needs to be a architect, certifications, resume with his college. There's nothing on the resume about that. I actually reached out to him to say, hey, you know, tell us more, we can learn, let us know what we're getting into. And he didn't provide anything. Now, he doesn't have to provide that to me as a resident.
Denise, if you
but I-
could finish up, your time is up.
Yep.
So just
Okay,
finish up.
but I hope that, no, thank you, but I hope that you guys are getting that. And so, and also the email from Peggy Norris, the Ridgewood historian, who sent you a notification yesterday. So,
Thank you very much,
thank you.
Denise.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, I will now close public comment, and we will go to our agenda, beginning with our manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. First, I just want to echo the sentiments of the mayor with regard to the incident that happened at Graydon Pool on Saturday. I just want to take a moment to publicly thank the staff of the Parks and Recreation Department, especially the pool staff led by Steve. They did a tremendous job in the minutes, just in seconds, after it was reported that a child might not have come up after jumping off a diving board. I further want to thank Chief Judge and Chief Lyons for their department's immediate response and all the emergency responders who were on scene. Within minutes, they were on location, they were in action, dive teams were in the water. Technology was used to detect whether or not there was a person in the water, and within 40 minutes, it was concluded that everyone was safe. And that was a team effort. As the mayor said, I've served 3 different places before I served here. I have never seen a more seamless response in an emergency that could have went a very different way if someone was in that water. So I just want to publicly thank all of our employees here and all of our volunteers who made that happen on Saturday. Today, a decision was made to suspend the pedestrian plaza through Labor Day. I just want to acknowledge that we put communication out on social media. There will be an e-blast that goes out tomorrow, but with overwhelming support from the community here in Ridgewood, the council brought back dining corrals, year-round outdoor dining, and the pedestrian plaza this summer. Initially, the response to the plaza was very positive and very good, with people coming out to enjoy the downtown. It was also very well received by the businesses at the onset. However, after school let out and the hot summer months set in, combined with record travel across the nation this year, we saw foot traffic fade downtown as the summer ensued. This is consistent with what is happening in other downtowns in the area. As a result, it was decided today to suspend the pedestrian plaza for the month of August. The group will begin to reevaluate what happens after Labor Day, and that will include input from both residents and the business community. Please be aware that the dining corral program and the year-round dining outdoors will continue, as will events and activities in Van Este Square. There was some back and forth on social media tonight about activities and events that are scheduled all the way through till October. Those events will continue, and if we need to make adjustments as to how they operate more in the square than on the roadway, our departments will certainly work with the groups coordinating those events to make sure that that happens. I just want to reiterate that it is the village's commitment to attract additional patrons and folks visiting our downtown, and regardless of the decision that was made today, that effort will not change. With regard to milling and paving, we have many, many road projects happening right now in the village. I realize that it can be frustrating at times. We've received a number of phone calls to the village manager's office concerned about people being able to get around in the community. However, it is our objective in working with the engineering department, the County of Bergen, and PSE&G to have almost all of this complete by the time school opens after Labor Day in September. This is the prime time to take on milling and paving projects because it does not disrupt the school commute. Folks are away, they're vacationing, so we're really working hard to try to get this done. Today was the last day of milling on the county projects on Godwin and Linwood. Tomorrow, they will be paving the entire stretch of Godwin Ave. This is, again, a county contract. Our police department has been out there making sure that the detours are as accessible as they can be, and our engineering department has informed all of the residents in that area that paving will commence tomorrow. On Friday, the county will move their effort to pave Linwood Avenue from North Maple to John Street. Unfortunately, that does coincide with the last day of camp at Graydon Pool, but the police department will be ensuring that vehicles can access Graydon for drop-off and for pickup at the campsite. Rest assured that all Valley Hospital entrances will remain open until later in the day tomorrow, when Linwood between Van Dyne and Pleasant will be closed. All detours will lead to North Van Dyne, and the main entrance of the hospital will be accessible. On Monday, they will be paving Linwood from John Street to Paramus Road. So we appreciate everyone's patience, not only on the county project, which is most disruptive because they're main roads in the village, but also on the PSE&G projects that's commencing off Glen. I want to announce that the Village Council is seeking volunteers to serve on various committees and boards. There are openings on the Project Pride Committee, the Village Arts Council. We are seeking one village resident to become a member of the Ridgewood Green Team, and one village resident to join the Central Business District Advisory Committee. Anyone who's interested in serving in any of those positions should fill out a citizen volunteer leadership form, which can be found on the village website under the heading Employment and Volunteer Opportunities, and send it with a cover letter to the village clerk's office. Attention, Joyce Margot. The deadline for submission is August 16th. Just want to report that I've had the opportunity to meet with a number of local organizations. Today, I met with the leadership of the Guild, had the opportunity to tour the YMCA with the executive director there last week. We have a new group coming into town. They are recruiting members to launch a Kiwanis Club here in the village. And I also had the opportunity to meet about some upcoming events with Joan Groom from the Chamber of Commerce. It's important that my office be able to interact with these community groups. I think that we are off to a great start. They have an open door policy to the manager's office, and I look forward to working with them to execute these events that are a benefit to the village. We finished our one-on-one department head meetings today, finishing with the municipal court. I think I only have one more council member, Councilmember Whites, to meet with on the governing body. And again, in September, we are going to have a Meet the Manager meeting here one night, which will be an open town hall forum where I invite all residents to come, ask questions, hear about my background, my experience, and talk about their perspective on the direction of the village moving forward. On August 14th, we will have a groundbreaking for the new water treatment plant on Goffel Road. We have confirmation that Congressman Gottheimer will be joining us, and I want to thank Rich Calby, our Director of Water Operations, and his staff for putting that together. This is a major investment in our water utility, and I want to thank he and his staff for all the work they're doing to improve that throughout the village. Had an opportunity last week to meet with the residents from the Shedler neighborhood. We talked about the bridge at the end of Kings Bridge, in addition to the property at Shedler. I think it was a very productive conversation. I was able to hear varying perspectives on both of those concerns, and we talked about the capital process to talk about funding initiatives in the future. And finally, I want to thank Chris from our engineering department for taking me on a tour of the village. We visited the pedestrian tunnel under the train station, the bus station, the taxi stand, and made a few other stops on our 3-hour tour along the way. It was educational for me. I'm a visual person, so to be able to see these places that are often talked about is very helpful. A few announcements. The Ridgewood Guild is sponsoring free movies in the park on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. in Memorial Park at Van Neste Square. Tonight's featured film was Man of Steel, and on August 16th, it's Sunset Boulevard. The movies start at 8:15. The free summer concert series out here in the Shell on Veterans Field continues. The Ridgewood Chamber of Commerce on each Sunday morning through the afternoon is holding their farmers market at the train station on the west side. We encourage people to patronize the farmers market on the weekends. The Ridgewood Guild also sponsors Music in the Night, providing at various locations on Friday nights through Labor Day, and their Art in the Park event will take place on Friday, August 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. From August 1st through Labor Day, Graydon Pool memberships decrease in price for residents. A resident may purchase a late season adult membership for only $75 and a late season child membership for only $70. Senior rates remain at $35 and non-resident rates remain at $325 for ages 16 plus and $210 for a child. The next Bergen County Utilities Authority Hazard Waste Collection will take place on Saturday, September 9th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Bergen County Campgrow Reservation in Mahwah. Upcoming Village Council meetings, August 9th, 2023, Village Council Public Meeting at 7:30, September 6th, Work Session at 7:30, September 13th, Public Meeting at 7:30, and September 27th, Work Session at 7:30. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Keith. And now we'll go to council reports. Evan?
Great, yep, I'll be somewhat brief. So I just want to add in the praise for the Graydon staff. I had family at Graydon when that was happening. I had a number of friends who were there at the time. I want to thank the village manager as well for keeping the council up to date with what was going on. Most importantly, I want to thank all the members of the village staff who participated in that. Put simply, that is what right looks like. It was executed flawlessly. We were lucky this time. The young lady who made the call to bring in the Marines, Paul, as you said, absolutely made the right call, 100%. I'd rather she be wrong a million times over than be right just once. But it's very reassuring to know that the village responded in the way that they did. And really, I think we have a great debt of gratitude for all the village employees that participated in that. Also, on the pedestrian plaza, just want to speak for a moment about that as well. Some of my best memories so far on the council have been the time that I've spent volunteering next to Pam, who has been running the pedestrian plaza effectively. Being able to meet all the citizens and see everybody out and about has been really, really great. I think it's the right call. I mean, I've certainly noticed that as the weather has just gotten a lot hotter, people just prefer to eat indoors. They prefer to shop indoors. I'm really looking forward to discussing bringing it back in September based upon whatever feedback we get from the community as well as from the businesses. But I think it's just been really, really great. And I think, our ability to adapt on the fly is again, what right looks like is what we should be doing. And also just want to remind everybody that all the great events in terms of bands and Tai Chi and yoga and all that's still going on, just the sheets aren't closed. So hope to see all of you out there. I know I will be manning the booth again if Pam will let me come back. And looking forward to meeting all of our folks who are coming out to see what's going on downtown.
Thanks, Ev. Siobhan?
Thanks. So I just want to echo and say how incredibly proud I am of our parks and pool staff. Tonight was lovely. You did a great job, Paul, but it was also very moving. And I think all of us had a very rough go waiting it out, and I'm grateful for everybody giving us the updates. Last week, Heather and I met with the representatives of the Kiwanis Club. There has not been a Kiwanis organization here in Ridgewood since the mid-'80s, and they, on Wednesday night, reestablished a chapter. So we're going to be hearing more about that. They were particularly looking to partner with the schools and promote everything that the Kiwanis does in terms of civic engagement, sponsoring with the youth. It was a very interesting meeting, and I'm thankful to Heather for her time. Also last week, we had our last and final demo of the software for what is going to be our most exciting new website coming soon. I want to thank Dylan and Heather and Keith for all the participation, as well as the communications committee. We have seen 3 demos. They've all been very informative, and we're meeting next week to go over our choices. I also want to thank the Board of Ed because, unbeknownst to us at the beginning of this, the Board of Education is also shopping for new websites, and the police department. We are also going to, with the new website, layer in the police department website. So thank you to everybody who made that happen. And in addition to that, the Communications Committee has kicked off a photo contest. We're going to be working with local photographers. You don't need to be trained or professional. And we're seeking landscape photos, not including people, of all areas of town. We're not going to apply broad, really strict rules. We can't take ones that identify people, but we're looking for things from a citizen's perspective. It could be a park. It could be a downtown. Anything you think that is symbolic. We're looking, while we're doing the development and the searching, to create some stock content. Clearly, Ridgewood's changed. We're also looking for some historical photos to layer into this. So if anybody feels that they're talented or medium talented and would like to submit it, we have the flyer. We've posted it on social media. It's listed on the website. We would love any and all help. We are also looking to partner when school starts with the photography club at the Ridgewood High School, and we're looking forward to that. So all the information's there. Additionally, this week we kicked off Adopt a Sapling. As some of you may remember, Adopt a Sapling is a new approach to planting more trees using volunteers and smaller trees. The smaller trees are less expensive. We can spend less and plant more of them. So there's 2 things we're looking for in this committee. We're looking for people to plant who want to come in and plant, and then we're looking for people to adopt. And in order to adopt, we created an adoption certificate, and you have to commit to it, and it basically means you need to care for your tree and ensure that it's watered. The number one cause of death for a baby tree or any tree, in fact, in Ridgewood, is lack of watering, and we have all of those things on social media as well. So the planting, the pilot location is the Orchard School District. That is not because of me, because one of our longevity shade tree members is from Orchard, and we are looking to get anywhere between 27 and 100 people to participate. So if you need to adopt a tree, or you know somebody in the Orchard School District, we'd love to have you. And if you don't live in Orchard and you want to come help dig holes and plant, we'd love to see you there as well. Tomorrow, we will be kicking off our letter to the community. Paul and I wrote a letter regarding access. So our Access weekend highlighting our special needs community is going to be October 6th through 8th. We have a series of events that will occur mostly in town and between the library and here. We are looking for time, treasure, and talent, which effectively means if you want to give us money or effort, we need many things to make this weekend happen. It's a wonderful weekend, and again, all the details will be posted on social media tomorrow. I did want to remind people that this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are Ridgewood sidewalk sales. It's always a good idea to come to Ridgewood to shop, dine, stroll, but I personally think the shopping this week will be incredible, and I encourage everybody to participate in it and support our vendors to the extent that they can. That's it.
Thanks, Siobhan. Lorraine?
Thank you. I haven't had any committee meetings. I just want to say that the Project Pride Committee is continuing to give out the Project Pride Awards. And if you have a neighbor, a friend passing a house where you think it's spectacular in their front yard, please email me their address, and we'd love to give them an award. The award does come with a $25 gift certificates to one of the restaurants downtown, and that the Guild has generously donated all those gift certificates. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Pam?
Well, the pedestrian plaza entertainment is going strong. We have so much talent in Ridgewood, and whether you like to dance or do yoga, we have all kinds of things happening. Specifically, this Saturday, we have 8 a.m. Tai Chi in the park, and Stroller Strides exercise at 10:30 with Art of Motion. And Indian Fest, that is part of the Asian Heritage Month, will begin at noon to 2 o'clock. We will have traditional North Indian Kathak, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, dancers. Also, sari draping, if you've ever tried on a sari or want to try on a sari, that will be one of the activities. There will be delicious Indian cuisine by Tabla Restaurant and other activities. And at night, at 7:30 on Saturday, the great band Treble will be playing, and I'll probably be dancing behind a tree somewhere in the park. And on Sunday, we have a new yoga provider, that's Village Yoga at 8 a.m. in the park. And at 7 o'clock, we have the Bold Collective, which is 2 Ridgewood graduates who will be playing house music. So we have a full weekend, and adding that to the sidewalk sale days, there's plenty to do downtown this weekend in the pedestrian plaza. And I did want to say that the Green Team, I think it has 2 vacancies. And just to explain what the Green Team does, it's a subcommittee of Green Ridgewood and is involved in executing and documenting the actions of Sustainable Jersey. So that's all environmentally oriented initiatives that we can take. For instance, the Green Restaurants Initiative, where we recognize the restaurants that have sustainable practices like composting and things like that. The Central Business District Advisory Committee studies the downtown and makes recommendations to the council. We did that for the master plan and for a transit village thing and other initiatives to keep our downtown vibrant, and it's really a very active group. It's kind of behind the scenes. It's not meant to put on events or celebrations, but it's a very important group to our community. So that vacancy is open also. And I urge you all to take the opportunity to get involved in our various committees, because you really see what goes on behind the curtain. And it's gratifying to learn why our government works the way it does and have your own contribution to it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Pam. I want to begin by thanking all of the incredible volunteers to the pedestrian plaza. This is something that we have been working on for a long time, and we hope that we will be bringing it back in September, but we're going to take a close, hard look at it. But in terms of the volunteers, you guys made this whole thing work, and I can't thank you enough. You always hear me saying, many hands make light work, and that's why this worked. I want to begin with thanking Pam Perrin, my partner in crime, who we talked about her getting involved in this. Little did she realize that she was going to be completely immersed in this for 15 hours every Saturday, not counting all the time that she spent during the week planning all of the entertainment, along with her cohort, Jeannie Johnson, and I'm going to say it again, it's been said many times, all that entertainment is going to be continuing. Not one thing is going to stop. It's all happening in the park every Saturday. So there's a lot of good things still going on in town, but this was a time for us to pivot, and we hope to pivot again very soon. I also want to thank our senior staff here, Heather, Keith. Keith made a point to say that the paving, the key paving has been done by, so much of it is being done by the county. But if these people are not here, maybe the paving doesn't get done by the county, or maybe it doesn't get done in the summer when we need it done. They're getting it done, and I want to say a personal thank you, because Linwood Avenue is my main artery in, and I'm a little sore from driving in from the way that road has been for the recent past. It is, they say that governing is all about filling the potholes. Well, you guys did a great job in filling the potholes here, because they needed it, and we're very happy, and I want to thank the town engineer, Chris Rudishauser, his staff, the people in streets, in Signal, who are getting all of this done. And I also want to thank Councilperson Siobhan Winograd. She thanked everybody for the new village website that is coming. This is coming because she pushed for it. And we are so happy about that, because it's something that we need. It is as important to tell our residents what is being done as it is to get it done. And this was something that she would not take no for an answer. And we're all happy that we agreed to it. So thanks, Siobhan. And that's all I have. And so now we move on to our regular agenda, and we will begin with the West Glen Avenue sidewalks presentation.
So Mayor, if I may, as Yvonne approaches, we provided the council with updated estimates and the various options that were discussed at our prior meeting relative to this subject. So that was included in the packet. We also have Bob Rooney here, who's here tonight to present a financial report. But if we do have questions about available bonding capacity, he is here to be able to answer those questions as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Yovan to take you through the various options that are available with regard to this project.
All right, hello everyone. We're back again. So from the last meeting, we updated all of the pricing. I'm very visual, so I kind of need to stand by the screen here if that's okay. We have our two ideas. We have a wall and a 4-foot sidewalk, or we have no wall and a 6-foot sidewalk right behind the curb. I sharpened the pencil on pricing, and let's start with the wall. So originally, to run a retaining wall with a 4-foot sidewalk on the whole south side of that block, which would be West Glen Avenue, it would run from North Monroe to Heights Road. We're talking $1.2 million. We talked about reducing the size, the scope of the project, and only run from Heights to Alpine, and putting a crosswalk at Alpine to work that we've done previously 2 years ago. That's going to be in the $763,000 range. Any questions on that?
I do. Johan?
Yes.
On the one where it's Heights to Alpine, does that include narrowing the crosswalks at Heights? Or is that something separate that we've already decided?
Yeah, that's separately approved, and
Okay.
that's green light.
And we're, okay. So is,
We can't hear you.
Sorry. We're going to talk about the funding for the bump outs at the intersection at the end of Yovan's presentation, but we're treating them as two different work efforts. And that was engineering's recommendation.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
It's smaller scale and not less intense, but less complicated, and we can have the paving contractor do that work at those bump outs, let's call them. It's something we can do with our current contract. All right. Any other question on the wall or shortened wall? So then we have option B.
Well, wait, I do have a question.
Okay.
In section 6, am I reading it correctly, that the highest point of the wall would be 5 blocks tall and about 3 to 4 feet tall? Is that right?
No problem. All right, one more time.
So I want to make sure that I understand this correctly. The highest area of the wall in section 6 is 5 blocks high.
It's, 4.5. So
Okay.
the bottom block is half buried.
Oh, I see.
There's no footings on these. These are pure weight, so the block itself is the footing.
And that,
So all the spec is for the block is that half of it's buried.
and the highest part of the wall would be 3 to 4 feet high? It's something less than an inch, and the scale here is 5 feet to an inch.
Don't scale, yeah, these are 11 by 17, so.
Oh. Need glasses?
Yes, I do. I don't know if they're gonna work. Let me see here.
They're pretty strong.
Yeah, I can't read, it's gray. They're 18, each wall is 18 inch, each block is 18 inches.
In height?
Yeah,
Oh, so that's pretty tall.
yeah, you're in the 5 to 6 range. So at Alpine area, right now, the grade is 6 feet tall. When you stand on the street, there's 6 feet of bedrock there. So we'd have to, not blast, but we're gonna have to chip away the bedrock to get all this in, even if it was no wall.
And we don't know for certain what it's going to cost to remove the bedrock.
Correct. It varies by contractor, whether they own the chipping equipment or not. You know, a lot of guys are learning to buy it and keep it. If someone has to rent it by the month, you know, it could upset everyone.
I mean, so What is the difference between the two? Is it just aesthetics? Is there some sort of benefit to having the retaining wall not versus not the retaining wall? Also, do we have a continued maintenance with the retaining wall versus not having the retaining wall? You know, why go one versus the other?
So with a retaining wall, you're not going to have any, if you can visualize those houses are very high up, and the grade runs towards the street, so you're going to have runoff. You're going to have water runoff, probably almost from the back of the houses, if even not the Wastina houses. There's water going to be running towards the street. If there's a wall, you're flattening out the area up top, and that water is going to run slower and cause less erosion.
Do you have a recommendation
I'm not a licensed engineer. I don't know if I can answer that question.
in terms of which one we should go with?
If I was a resident there, I'd want the wall.
Okay. Have we spoken with any of the people whose, I guess, front of the house we're going to be changing in the right-of-way?
So through you, Mayor, to Councilman Whites, we have a list of the affected households. We were reluctant to move on a resident meeting until we met here because the scope of the project could change. If it's the whole strip, then obviously we'd invite all of those residents to the meeting and hear what they have to say. If we go from Heights to Alpine, that reduces the amount of homeowners who are affected.
I mean, I would be interested in maybe some of their thoughts in terms of the retaining wall versus not the retaining wall, because it is going to be sort of the front of their house. I mean, it's not definitive to me, but it is something that I'd probably want to keep in mind.
A few points that I would mention in the conversations that I've had with Jovan and with Chris since our last meeting. Do you want to talk a little bit about the concern about the runoff and the fact that that would
Yeah,
most
so-
likely come up on the sidewalk and create some?
Take a few steps back. The reason I proposed the wall originally, all these homes, 90% of these homes have single-lane driveways. They're shuffling cars to get in and out. It's a nightmare. They're parking on Glen Avenue, switching cars, putting the other car in. Building a wall, I could cut back into their steep slopes and give them a double-wide driveway. Width-wise, so they can park 2 cars sideways.
Wait, they have single-width driveways now,
Correct.
but you're talking about going cutting in perpendicular to Glen,
Correct.
50, 60 feet or
No,
something.
like a car width, maybe probably 18 feet deep. Just enough to get a
car
second
length.
car in there sideways,
I see.
next
So,
to the first.
so those cars that we see when we're going down Glen, and we see them tucked up against their property, this would allow for them to put that car on their property. They, of course, have to want this.
Correct.
Got it.
It's
cars-
safer for them, and it's a huge advantage to have this. It would need a variance. If we did the work ourselves, I would assume, we would waive all these variance requirements for these residents. This
Matt?
is something we haven't talked about.
Well, the only issue I would have is that, obviously, dealing with the right-of-way and the extent of how far we can go with it, but you would then need a retaining wall for the new part of the driveway on the side.
Correct.
Who would handle that cost?
It's all included in that price.
That's all included in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your design creates an accommodation. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I think it's a good thing, but it creates an accommodation for the residents who live on West Glen, on West Glen, acknowledging that many of them will lose that little place to park. I won't even call it a parking space.
Correct.
It's a good plan.
But if you don't do the wall, then they'll lose that parking space and not. and
Yeah,
just
so if I'm
lose
not
it, that's-
doing a wall, I can't go 18 feet back and make their driveway wider and still slope it 2 to 1. It's impossible.
Do you know, so do we know how many houses we're talking about that have that extra space from Heights to, well, number one, the wall wouldn't go all the way from Heights to Monroe, correct?
No, so last year we did do sidewalk on the first 4 houses, I believe, from the light, and that's where we stopped. After that, you're gonna need walls, whether it's,
You
know,
will?
the
'Cause-
first two houses might need an 18-inch wall.
Okay, yeah,
And
because
then
it
and then
doesn't look
it drops
bad.
real steep.
Okay,
So it varies, but at Alpine, it's definitely the largest walls will be right there. The ones closer to S Hill, they've already kind of cut back. So there's going to be less work there. And then there's that 100 feet of woods. That's going to be a big wall back again there. That's just, it's not developed.
Other questions?
I don't, Jovan, do you know how many houses we're talking about that have a parking space that would be in jeopardy if we did not do the wall?
Oh, you mean like on-street parking? Or you talk, like
Well,
when
I'm
they're
talking-
switching cars?
If you're driving down Glen towards Maple,
Okay.
there are, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 5 or 6 houses that people have kind of cut out an illegal parking spot, for lack of a better word, where they're not on the road, but they're parallel to the road.
I would say that's most of the people east of Alpine that have that like on-street parking there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I would say there's, I would say all of those past Alpine. Am I counting these right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 houses, all 6.
Okay.
They all have some kind of, you know, the wall, it's just not as steep there, so they've built walls in the past.
Right.
And they're only 2, 3 feet high, which wasn't a great expense.
Okay.
But their car is on the shoulder line, on that white line.
Right, oh, no, it's very, very close to the street.
The houses west of Alpine, you can see they didn't even bother. It's almost a vertical face of bedrock. There is no room.
So those people just have a single driveway and they can park 2 cars front and back?
Most of them, there's 2 houses that have kind of a shared driveway, so that's pretty wide. And I'm sure they, ring each other's doorbell when they have to flip-flop cars. And there's one other property that it does have a double-wide driveway. Meaning it's like, assume a garage door is 8 feet wide. Double-car garage is about 16 feet wide. So 16 feet's a nice 2-car width, as long as you can open your door. If there's a wall there, you're gonna have a problem.
16 feet is tough to
Yeah.
have 2 cars. Because I think my driveway is 18 wide, and it's not easy.
If there's grass there, then you can step out on the grass, So the incentive was to get them wider driveways for the inconvenience of the
Right.
whole project and improving the right-of-way.
And do I gather it's your opinion that if we don't put the walls in there, that somewhere along the way, we're going to have an erosion problem?
I don't know if I can say that, but you need really good landscaping, and it needs to catch. This weather we're having where there's 20-minute deluges every other day, you can put mulch down, you can put all kinds of stuff down. If it's gone, it doesn't establish. The chips don't bind. There's just, I don't-
But the slope is pretty steep, and I had this conversation with Keith the other day, and I said, are we doing it halfway by saving money?
so rule of thumb is a slope that's 3-on-1 is mowable. So if it's 2-on-1, it could, it could be chipped, mulched. It's relatively okay. 1-to-1 would be a 45-degree angle. That would be, that's not doable.
So
All the
back-
slopes around the village, this new building here, they're probably like 2-to-1.
And what would the slope be on Glen? if
It
we did-
would be 2-to-1, so it'd be 2 horizontal to 1 vertical.
And we've been able to manage that here
Yeah,
without a problem. without an erosion issue.
Well, you got to have good gutters. You know, there's not a lot of stress on this embankment right here, but yeah. I can't vouch for what's coming, you know, even Wastina's even higher than those houses, so, you know, without standing out there in the pouring rain, it's hard to tell where they're, you know, who's managing their water the best or the worst.
So the advantage of the wall is that we would provide a needed accommodation to the residents there, and we would ensure not having an erosion problem.
Correct.
Without the wall, there's no accommodation for the additional cars, and we're unsure if there would be an erosion problem.
Correct.
But the advantage is that it is not quite twice as much
Yes.
to put the wall in.
So speaking, oh, sorry.
And you get the sidewalks, which is, you know.
Well, the sidewalks
right.
are there, are
Right.
in both proposals.
I mean, I think one of the things that with the runoff, the 2-to-1, it is steep, but if you have the Belgian block, there is a buffer as well, because on the second proposal, you have a lip, yes?
We proposed a Belgian block curb on the back of the sidewalk. It would help probably some of the wood chips washing out. But again, that's still a maintenance. Someone, the residents will have to, oh, it's not on this drawing. The residents will still, you know, you gotta maintain it.
And then-
Eventually, over time, the mulch will come flush to the top of that Belgian block.
And
it'll
then that
just-
was my next question. What's the average lifespan of the retaining wall, given a 5-foot height? I mean, you're going to have, if you have runoff, it's going to have wear.
I would say 50 years. Anything concrete-based is gonna be 50 years.
So we're gonna have to do this again in 50 years?
So,
I'll do my best.
I see Bob in the back trying to hide. Bob, how do we pay for this?
Yeah, Bob, could you come up, because you really have the answers to, or here, let me rephrase that. We have questions for you regarding this.
Right. While Bob is coming up, I just want to say one more advantage to the walls is that I think visually, it's a nicer look.
No question.
We'll have, you know, you have the strip of grass, we can plant a tree in it, you have a 4-foot sidewalk. Having a curb and a 6-foot sidewalk is a much colder look.
Clearly. Bob, and this is the conversation that I've been having with a couple of people, is that clearly this council is very interested in doing one of these projects. Ideally, we would like, for lack of a better term, the Cadillac project. And when I first came on this council, you explained to me that we basically bond about $7.5 million a year, and the reason that that works is because every year we retire $7.5 million. And so my question is, if we wanted to, I think many of us here would like to put this at the top of the bonding list for next year. If, however, we bonded for it this year, with your knowledge of what's needed, and I ask Heather and Keith to chime in on this, could we realistically hope to keep next year's bonding to $6-ish million, knowing that there are pressing needs, knowing that when a truck goes in town that we need to do our daily business, it can be $500,000 or $600,000.
So yes, we can figure this out on how to make this work for this year.
Could you speak a little more loudly into the mic?
Sorry, got to get a longer neck.
Yep.
We could probably figure out how to make this work this year, keeping in mind that we'd have to ask department heads to sharpen their pencils again for next year. You know, our big projects always come out of engineering, like this. So we'd have to take a look and see what else is on the horizon that we may have to address. But clearly, if we try to maintain that $6.5, $7 million next year, we should be able to get through it this year. Now, I'm just going to bring it to your attention. We've also had a substantial amount of appropriations for water, for PFAS. $60 million. A couple of months ago, you're going to be asked for another 11 or 10 tonight. That impacts our net debt. Doesn't affect what you're asking me to do, but I'm just bringing it to your attention. That debt number gets higher and higher. And we all have the needs. We have the needs for water. We have to make sure we accomplish that. And of course, we have the needs of the residents as well for when it comes to projects like this. But as we've done in the past couple of years, we started with a $7.5 million number at budget, and we've had things that popped up that brought us to $8-9 million. And this would be one of those that would get us to that $8 million, $8.5 million. So the only other question I would have to Jovan is, can this be done in 2 pieces? Does it have to be all this year? Can we do half this year, half next year? Again, I know you get into the cost areas where you're bringing equipment on, and it might be more difficult to bring it back and, you know, see what that cost is.
Even more importantly, let's say we did theoretically want to try to bond this year. Could you even do it this year? I mean, we enough time before the weather gets bad.
All right, so I got a twist for you.
All right.
Sure.
So back in the 90s, we redid all the sidewalks in the CBD area. We bought the bricks ourselves because it's such a long turnaround time. We stored them. We bid out the sidewalk work, and the contractor didn't have to purchase the brick. We had them. What if we bought the block directly? We store it, whatever. It's got, let's say it takes 6 to 8 months to get the block. We order it, we buy it, we have it. Now the contractor's only bidding on a $200,000, $300,000 job, and he doesn't have to pay up front $1 million to buy the block. That's gonna be a problem for the contractor. They're bonded, you know, yeah, they can
So you're
afford it.
saying we bond the stone this year, and then we bond the project next year?
So, yeah, so we, you know, we cut a purchase order, and we put the order in for the block. We're not gonna see it for 6 to 8 months.
So it sounds like, and I assume even if we wanted to move forward, a contractor couldn't get that block any quicker anyway?
Correct,
So there's really feasibly no way to do this project this year anyway?
correct.
But if we bond the blocks out now, we may save some money next year and also spread the money out between 2 years.
Can I just ask a question? Are you guys leaning towards the 1.2 for a total across 15 homes? I just want to, are you going medium block or heavy block? Are you doing the full, because 1.2 million as opposed to 763, I mean, where are we leaning here?
Here, I am,
And in addition, I just want to, I mean, I
I
think.
just assumed $1 million. That's,
yeah,
million too.
I am personally, look, everything's on the table.
Right.
I want to see if there's a way to do the, as I called it, the Cadillac version of this, which is the $1.2 million.
Right.
And I have a couple of questions that were raised here. One is, I understand how that breaks things into a couple of pieces. It doesn't actually save us any money, though.
It's gonna, no, because the contractor will probably charge us a little more overhead because he's losing money on not ordering the block himself. But it guarantees us that the block is here on time, and we're not playing games on, did he order the block? Did he put a deposit down? What is the deposit? Can he afford to put the deposit down? All these little things. We're in control of the main product.
Right, but it doesn't say, it actually costs us an extra couple of bucks to do it like this. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I just want to understand.
It might, you know, he has to bond the job less, so whatever he's bonding with his company,
Got it.
it is now, instead of being 1.2 million, he's only gonna bond 300,000, so he's, you know,
Got it.
there's less fees for him, which would hopefully reflect in our cost in doing the
Right.
job. We, like the sidewalks we did in the 90s, you know, these were small-time guys doing big jobs downtown.
Right.
And that brick was a killer.
And to that end, Bob, when I asked you the question earlier, it was, can we, and again, I know you have to go back to department heads, see what we've got for next year, see what's going on, and I asked if you think it's possible to go for $6 million in bonding instead of 7.5, and you said yes, and then you said, yeah, and so we'll be at 7.5, 8, 8.5, something like that.
well, again, we'd have to go back for their needs. We average $7.5 million a year. And like I said, we've gone up 2 years. because of other circumstances. And we're still in good shape. So our goal next year might be for 6, ask the department heads to go with that, and then when it gets to council, it's up to you as to how we're gonna move with that.
And one follow-up to this. So we need to, you need to go back and check with department heads and then come back to us. So I think that that's a good way to start. But then you raised another issue about our bond rating. If we were able to do this and keep our bonding at $6 million next year, could you also then make an assessment when you come back from having checked with bond counsel, whoever, as to how that might affect our bond rating?
So the bond rating shouldn't be an issue. We're AAA, and we were AAA after we issued the $60 million of debt. They were well aware of it. They knew how we were funding it through the iBank. They knew the reason for it, and they were fine with it. So I don't believe that doing, $6 million or $7 million next year is going to impact that at all.
Okay.
I have a couple.
Is there any grant money available, say Safe Routes to School, or?
So there's too many constraints on environmental, so there's a stream across the way on the north side. That sidewalk improvement would be within 50 feet of that stream, open course water. So it would have environmental review on the improvements we do there if it's federally, the work is done federally. Now, common sense tells you there's a street in a way. There's no, there's no riparian buffer. There's no tree plantings in the street. We can't do that stuff. Obviously, actually, the proposed wall project, I proposed putting trees along the street. I know there was an issue about cars backing out and the trees blocking it, but we can work with the homeowners on where to put trees. So, yeah, we haven't had success finding a proper grant with this.
Through you, Mayor, there are DEP restrictions due to that stream that would cause us to have to jump through some challenges in order to secure that fund to do this project, because
So
it
it's
is,
all
it
on
it is
us.
it's within that 50 feet of the stream. Even the improvements on the opposite side of the street.
I mean, we could try. We can't, we
I've
could
met them.
hopefully work. No?
I don't think so.
You don't think there's any possibility?
I met them out there.
They're pretty strict when it
Yeah,
comes
they're
to
not
that.
interested.
Even, once you're past the 50 feet?
If you, I can't, we didn't go that far. Is it breaking the project into 2? That I can't answer. We'd have to.
Can't hurt to ask. I'm going to go back to something. So in 2023, the budget, there was $500,000 of capital money that was put in Shedler, but it wasn't necessarily, it didn't have to stay in Shedler. I think it was worded in such a way that you said it could be used for the West Glen sidewalks. Is that correct?
I have to go back and look at the ordinance, but at the time we talked about it, I said we tried to put some flexibility into the groupings that we used for capital projects, but I'd have to go back and look at it.
Okay, because I know we had a conversation once that there was 500,000, and I think the mayor had suggested, let's take 100,000, put it towards Glen sidewalks. I think Councilwoman Winograd had expressed maybe a little bit more. I expressed the whole 500,000. So I'd like to go back to that to see. I don't see why it wouldn't be there. I mean, you said it was, at that point, you did say it was worded properly, that it could be used for West Glen, so I can't imagine that that had changed. So I would like to use part of that money, certainly, to put it towards West Glen.
Can we go back, because this is like driving me a little crazy here. So we need the project and then the funding. And what I just want to say to the funding while you're here, we are back to competition for capital, because we're going to have $1.2 million if we go with the premium. which leaves the bridge unattended. And those are two carryover capital issues from the community. We owe DPW, in my mind, some garbage trucks. There were things that we don't want to be disingenuous with the capital. And then there's the reality that general operating and keeping our first responders safe eats up an enormous amount of capital. So already, like, this is stressing me out from a funding standpoint. No, it really is, because I still feel bad about the garbage trucks. So with that, I mean, I understand the funding, and thank you, Bob, for exploring all the options. Very, very grateful, and I do like the idea of bulk purchasing. It's still very variable to me that we could go from, you know, a mini no block from 1.97 thousand to 1.2, and it seems, and look, I'm fully behind the sidewalks, but that's a lot of accommodation for personal parking spots to burden the general taxpayer. You know, I think I understand the look, and I understand the slope, and I get that. That is a lot. There's 15 homes that are affected here. All of them have very intricate driveway mouths, which we're gonna have to interface with. It's not an insignificant issue when you look at the technical sides of it. So for me, I'm pro-sidewalk. I think all 5 of us are pro-sidewalk. Then we get to what we wanna do to buffer with the runoff. I mean, if we're talking funding, we could go no walls and the Queensboro Bridge and come in less than the premium version here. Kingsbridge, sorry.
Queensboro.
Queensboro,
That's
sorry,
over in
sorry,
Manhattan.
I was in Long Island, sorry. So, I mean, we have 4 choices here, and it seems like everybody other than me is extremely warm on the most expensive. Am I?
And I'm gonna make a recommendation, and you know, we can jump in, but you raise a very good point about the Kingsbridge Lane Bridge. So, Bob, I'm gonna ask, on behalf of the council, if you could go back, sit with your department heads, with the manager, tell us how much could we realistically bond for these projects, knowing that we have some options here, and still fund the necessary projects that we are anticipating in 6 or 7, and come back to us in September at our next work session. Does that sound like a good plan going forward?
Yeah, I mean,
guys?
just put a finer point on it. I mean, yes, I love the idea of the $1.2 million. I think it's gonna look great. It's gonna be great for those residents. I think it's great for runoff. I'm a big fan of do it once and do it right. But I agree with Siobhan, I'm not willing to do the Cadillac here if it means that those folks on the other side of town don't get the bridge that they need to. So that's exactly my question, I think, is what the mayor just put, is what can we afford? How can we afford to do both? Is there a middle ground where we get both, where maybe you don't use the wall? Or is it possible to do the bridge and do this right and do the 1.2 million? That, I mean, to me, it's just a matter of dollars and cents, and I think, Bob, we're looking for your steer in terms of what you think is the right way. Is there a way to bond some of it now and then next year? But I think, and again, I don't want to speak for all 5 of us, because I know we all disagree, if there's a way to do the 1.2 and get that bridge, wonderful. If not, then we've got to make some hard choices and figure out a way, maybe meet in the middle on the 2 projects.
Could I say one thing too with that? Is there any way, because we've seen neighbors, I said one West Glen and one Shedler, we've heard and had meetings. I think these 15 homes, it'd be interesting to hear from them. I think part of, for me, is the decision-making. You know what, I have 4 cars now, I have 4 drivers, so parking is super important to me. It might not be to everybody. So one of the concerns might be lying in one of those 15 houses, and it might be beneficial to say, we're thinking about this is coming, and what are their thoughts? You know, I don't know.
I agree. No, I think we should get their input,
So, I mean,
absolutely.
it just seems like, to me, you know, all of us have big kids. Evan doesn't have drivers, but, you know, driving spots are big time when you have teenagers. And so I'd be very mad if mine went missing, but if people might have 1 car. So I'm more interested in, maybe we could establish some type of direct communication with those residents to say, hey, listen, like, we have a premium that we might not be able to pay for. And it's like what I say to my teenagers too. And then we have a lower one that we could get tomorrow. What are your thoughts? What do your daily lives look like, you know? Because those residents have been very vocal on the phone, and some of them are from Alpine, but the actual homeowners on West Glen,
Yeah, agreed. I mean,
feel like I'm
I've been
talking
saying
a
all
lot now.
along, we should at least hear from some of those people that are
Right.
affected. It's not definitive, we have to do what's in the best interest of the village as a whole, but it's literally through their front yard, so
Yeah.
they should know about it, we should hear their feedback and factor that into whatever we decide to do.
So through you, Mayor, if I could make a few recommendations. One, more than happy to coordinate when Chris gets back, a resident meeting. We'll have them in here one night, have Yovan, myself, Chris, and we'll talk through the pros and cons from the residents' perspective as to how this affects their property, what the benefits are, what the downside are. We'll compile that data and that information from those who show up, and we'll report that back to council. That's not a problem. I'd ask the council to allow Bob and I to go back, look at last year's capital requests that were not granted. We have a department head meeting coming up that should coincide with our next council meeting. We will go through extensively what the vision is for capital submissions. Budget requests have already gone out to the department heads this week, so they're already thinking along the lines of what they need to submit for capital. So I think Bob and I, while it won't be an exact science like it would be at budget time, I think we can get a handle and get our arms wrapped around what we see coming in requests come preparation for 2024. The only thing I would ask the council to consider tonight, and we can talk to Bob while he's here about that, is just to circle back to the bump out project at the intersection that we talked about. Yovan, I think Chris's rough estimate was somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. And the reason I'd like to expedite this decision tonight is this can be piggybacked on our existing paving contract, which means that we can probably get this done if we have a green light and we have funding available. We can probably get this done before the winter sets in.
We already awarded the contract.
For the bump outs?
Yeah, in July.
Okay.
We already did it, so they already approved it.
So
It's already
all we
going
looked at last
forward.
week was the concept plan.
Yeah, we're just going forward.
Okay.
Can I just say something before we get to the bump out? So I just want to get also a definitive answer on the 500,000. Because that could go a long way with this. And then on the bump outs, there was a gentleman that came up at the end of public comment and spoke about, you know, trucks not being able to get through. And I think Chief Judge was going to be spoken to, and Sean was going to be spoken to. Do we have any results of that?
They were both spoken to. We did do a turning radius exercise with Chris and Yovan. So Yovan, you want to expand on that a little more?
Turning template, there it goes. I have a turning template for a current ladder truck. That's the worst case scenario. The garbage trucks are actually smaller. I mean, yeah, smaller like a wheelbase. So I use that as a stock item, and actually we did it together, the exercise, and you drag it along pretending it goes around the road. It fits.
So with the bump outs,
Yeah.
it's okay?
You got to slow down. You know, no one's going to go 35 miles an hour
Okay.
and make a turn. It's just, you got to learn a little.
I just also, if we could, not to be bossy, I mean, I want to say this, I'm pro sidewalks, pro full span. I don't really like the idea of Alpine in the middle. So if that's helpful, because I know you guys are reliant, I was hoping, I mean, that's where I am. So
I don't understand what you're saying.
there's the block version and the no block version. And then there's the light, which means we only go to Alpine. Okay, so I am pro full 9 yards or full 15 houses and pro sidewalk. And the walls are the variable part of this for me. Is everybody else pretty much on? I think
Yeah,
the
I'm
Alpine idea is a cost-effective thing, but the crosswalk on the slope there does make me nervous. I think it was a really good idea, and like, because this is a workshop, and I love saying that because it's an idea. I'm not really warm on the light version of this project.
You know, plus if you have kids who are using those sidewalks, and it's especially during the winter when it gets dark early, yeah, I agree with Siobhan on this. To me, the question is just wall or no wall. To me, we should do all 15 houses. Yeah, no, 100% agree.
And then through you, Mayor, the only closing comment I'll have on this is one of the issues that came up was the revisit of whether S Hill becomes a one-way. So I'm not necessarily looking for guidance on that tonight, but between now and the next time we revisit this project, if the council could give some personal consideration to what they think is best there, and we'll also collect the professionals, including the police department's opinions for
You
your
took the words right
consideration.
out of my mouth, Keith. We want to hear from traffic on this, but why don't we say we're going to move on? I'm
Can
sorry,
I have
go
just
ahead.
one last comment? And I don't want to add more to this already busy agenda. But Keith, when you're talking about some of the traffic on S Hill and making it one-way, about 1,000 feet, maybe 2,000 feet west is the intersection of Oak and Glen. And full disclosure, I live right near there. There's at least 2 bad accidents at that blinking light every year. And there was one really bad one about a month or two ago where a car flipped over. And it seems like just, I've lived where I've lived now over 10 years, like clockwork, there are 2 bad accidents. If you can start asking a bit about if there's anything done on that intersection, I know I once brought it up years ago and I was told that it's too close to another light to put a light. I don't really know, but it's not very far from S Hill. And I'd be interested to see what some of the same safety people say about that intersection as they do about whether or not we go one way in S Hill.
Heather, did they?
I got
put-
ideas for that already.
What's that?
Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
No.
Okay.
Not on TV, thanks.
Okay, and with that, because we can kick this around for a while, why don't we have Bob come back on September 6th after he and Keith have sat down with department heads, and once you determine what kind of pot of money you can gather, then we can, which is, you think is the hard decision, but then the hard decision is, okay, we have many options here, including the Kingsbridge Lane Bridge, which we all agree needs to be done. So let's leave it at that. Everyone good?
Yeah.
Great.
Not to be confused with the Queensboro Bridge.
Yeah, we're not, and let's be abundantly clear, we are not doing any work on the
No
Queensboro
tolls.
Bridge.
Thank you, Yovan. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Through
Yvonne, thank you so much.
Through you, Mayor, if we can, if you'll indulge me, if we can have Bob go, he's actually C7.
You took the words right out of my mouth because, and I told him, don't go, I was motioning to him, don't go anyplace, let's get you out of here.
Thank you very much for the consideration, I appreciate it. So I provide you with a summary of the revenue and expenses for the current fund, the water fund, and the park and utility fund. So the revenue perspective from the current fund, pretty much on track with what our anticipations are for the 6 months. We do have some billings that will take place in the, or have taken place in the month of July, which we'll start to see income coming through, which is just normal for how the system goes. Our state aid of $1.8 million will start to be distributed the month of August. So it gets distributed August through October. So we anticipate that will be timely. We've received notification and confirmation that we will get the full amount. That also has to do with the fact that every year we do best practices, and our best practices conform to state regulations, so we get 100% of our state aid. So overall, in the general fund, we're at about 52% of what I anticipate for the 6 months. For the appropriations in the general fund, again, using 50% as a target. For those that have asterisks next to them, we're just waiting. A lot of departments do not utilize the encumbrance system that we prefer they do, which basically means, and I'll describe the blanket encumbrance, and you'll sort of get the idea. So for any department that knows they have a need for a specific amount of money, let's say it's for tires, if they anticipate spending $500,000 for the year for tires, they put a blanket encumbrance into the system. So that reserves that amount, so it can't be used for anything else, which is a good thing. That's what our system is designed for. So as we get closer to the end of the year, if we feel that they don't have the need, then we cancel the encumbrance, we free up money for other items that we may have a need for without making transfers. So a lot of these that you see in here, I've identified as blanket encumbrances that will exceed the 50% expectation that we have. So in some cases, it's 70, I think I have 1 or 2 that might even be 100%. So again, that's a good thing. That's how the system was developed, and we ask that the department heads do that. Those that do not do it usually don't have any big ticket items that they're trying to reserve money for. They're on a cash basis. When they know they have requisitions, they submit them, but they don't primarily use blanket encumbrances. But again, we track them tediously to make certain that they do enter the information in as soon as they know it, so we can put that money aside for their needs. There's some allocations that come through engineering, come through parking and water that have, we book them at the end of the quarters. So there's still some that have not been posted. They were posted in July, so you'll see them in the next quarter's report. Unless there's specific questions about the current fund, pretty much we're, again, with those blank encumbrances, we're at about, 55%, 56% of overall budget. And again, that's common for this time of year. So we're in good shape.
I have a question.
Sure.
About, on page 1, item 08-113, interest on investments and deposits. How is it that we've received 201% of what we had budgeted?
So we can only anticipate what we collect. So the prior year, we collected roughly 400,000, let's say, in investment income. So I was limited to how much I could put in this year's budget. Interest rates are significantly better than they were last year at this time, to the point of doubling for the year almost what we anticipate.
Okay.
So that's a good thing.
So, and I'm sorry if I missed this, so when you say we're at 55, 56%, is that with the additional $400,000 offsetting our expenses, or is that 56%, I'm sorry, 56% of what you
So
said
compared
we
to the
spent?
budget,
Yep.
compared to the appropriation, we've spent or encumbered
Right.
56%.
So the
of
400,000 is still sort of found money then a little bit?
So the 400,000, in this case, the excess goes into surplus, so
Excellent,
it
okay.
could be used for next year's budget.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to confirm.
Good.
Right. Now, we just have to make certain that, again, you're limited to what you collect. We just have to keep an eye on next year's interest rates, projections, so that we don't anticipate everything we collect, and if rates go down, then we come up short.
Right,
So
we just need to budget responsibly for next year, but it's still money for us this year.
that's correct.
All right.
So
Money
I
in the
have
bank.
2 questions.
Yes.
As we all know, it was an incredibly tight budget year. And at 52 or 55%, having spent 52 or 55% of our appropriation, are we looking good that we will be fine by the end of the fiscal year?
So right now, we're looking good. I will guarantee, though, there will be a few departments that are going to require transfers for whatever reason. Increase in cost of chemicals, things that, just keep going up and up that we did not anticipate at the time, but I think we're going to be fine.
So you think we're going to be fine even with those transfers?
Yes.
And again, that's just,
It's going to be tight.
it's not a guarantee. I'm just again, if we were at 47%, it would be much better. But at 50-something%, and then the next question is, since we were just looking for money a few minutes ago, the $400,000 that you anticipate we may have, do you anticipate that we may have that regardless of those transfers? I use the word may.
We're guaranteed that. That's money in the bank right now.
So we are 400,000 to the good that perhaps could go towards those projects that we just discussed.
I'm going to say no, because we're
you
in
do that.
We're in operating. You're dealing with capital for those projects. You potentially could use some of it, but right now, let's look at capital
Yep.
separately.
Yep, just asking. Good.
Okay.
Anyone else?
That means we can't put a blanket encumbrance on it?
Just learned blanket encumbrance. Anybody else have any questions for Bob?
No.
Or can we let him go home?
So water. No, I'm not done.
Oh, you have water.
I just did general.
Then let's go to
Page 19. Well, maybe it's actually before that.
A1,
Yes.
9A1.
Page 17. Water utility revenues. So we're about 45% of what we anticipated for the year. We have
Sorry,
some.
what are we looking at?
We're looking at the same document.
Page
that we just
17.
had On page 17.
Thank you.
Is the, I just have one question. Is the font size okay?
Yeah. this is
Okay.
pretty good.
Oh, my gosh.
We had to work on that.
Yep.
So under water utility fund, we're about 45% of what we anticipated in the budget. We have our water rate increases that are scheduled to be billed in July, some cell tower rent in July, so, and also fire hydrant service. So we're fine in water revenues, even though we're 45%, we're still good. On the appropriation side, we're about 41%. We still are looking to try and get some encumbrances put in there for other expenses. It's a work in progress, but we'll get it done. And the big numbers in there are usually water purchases from other entities, so, but we're fine with the water as well.
Great.
And then on page 20, we have the parking utility fund. Revenues there at about 51% of what we anticipated. The effect of the change from $1 to $1.25 should start to affect us in July. So we're comfortable on the revenue side, and on the appropriation side, we're slightly below what we anticipate this year, but everything is on target. So I don't have any issues with parking either.
I have a question, but I bet you can guess what it is. The reclamation metal.
Could you speak
from
more into the mic?
The reclamation metal from the deadhead meters. We had talked about that going back into the utility. Do we have a value on that?
I do not.
Okay,
I will find out for you, though.
okay.
Anyone else? Bob, thank you so much.
Quite welcome.
Very nice, Bob.
We'll see you on the 6th.
Yes, you will. Probably
Bring-
before that.
Bring good news.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, Mayor, working through the discussion items, we'll start with Ridgewood Water. We have a recommendation to award a sole source contract for support services for the SCADA system. This is an agreement that includes service labor rates for support services, even beyond software support, and we call them in on an as-needed basis. The SCADA software system that allows remote control tracking of the water system is essential to the daily operation, and Rich is recommending a not to exceed of $25,000 for these support services. Funding is available in the water operating budget. Any questions on this?
Yes. He's asking for $25,000 for this year. It's a 3-year contract. The other years, it was $19,869. Why are we paying more this year?
Relative to the issue that we discussed and closed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Good, good. Other questions? Let's go.
Okay. With regard to funding for the PFAS treatment facility at East Ridgewood and West End, this is the proposed $11 million bond that Mr. Rooney referenced during his presentation earlier. This would fund construction and would be eligible to cover the Section 20 expenses for engineering fees for both the West End and East Ridge treatment facilities. This would address 2 of the 12 facilities that are proposed for removal of PFAS compounds from the drinking water. Ridgewood Water entered into an administrative consent order, as everyone here knows, with New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection, and this is part of that compliance plan.
I'm a little confused by one sentence in the bottom in the footnote. It says, it's about 5 lines from the bottom, and it says, Ridgewood Water has awarded a construction contracts and has broken ground on construction for the Prospect and Ravine treatment facilities. Isn't Ravine the one that we're going to break ground on August 14th?
Yes, I think I don't want to speak, maybe Heather can shed light on this. I think the intention is that we're breaking ground and the contract signed for that. So while we might not be doing physical work, we're prepared to move forward on that facility.
Gotcha.
Unless, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Okay. All right, so we're comfortable with the introduction of this.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Let's go.
Under parking, this is a recommendation that comes from both engineering and the police department. We have some issues with parking in unpaid spots on North Walnut Street and Maston Place. The residents have complained to both engineering and PD on this particular issue. It makes it difficult for people to enter and exit their driveways when there's a multitude of cars parked on the street. For folks who are using the business district, it was actually identified that a lot of the folks who are parking off the main street and on these side streets are employees of the central business district. So in consultation with the police department, we're recommending an ordinance that proposes 2-hour parking in that area as per the ordinance that's attached.
Questions, anyone?
I just found a couple of typos in the letter to the residents. Do I pass that to Heather or to Keith?
You can give it to me if you want to mark it up, and I will bring it to engineering in the morning.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know if Pam, one of the things Pam found, where it says no parking, at all times for the west side southbound direction of North Walnut Street from Linwood Avenue north to Maston Place. The same 2-hour time limit would also apply to the south side. So you're not talking about a time limit, you're talking about no parking. So I think it should say the same no parking would also apply to the south side. Is that one of the things you saw?
No,
It was just a typo.
they were even more minor than that.
Right, does that make sense? Because the first thing you're talking about is a time limit, and you're saying 7 to 8 PM, no vehicle permitted to park for more than 2 hours. And you have the same 2-hour time limit applies to the north side of Maston Place. So that's the 2-hour time limit is done. And then the next paragraph, it's no parking, and you talk about no parking north to Maston Place, and then the second sentence says the same 2-hour time limit. It should be the same no parking would also.
Councilwoman, what I will do with this, especially being somewhat unfamiliar with the territory.
Right.
I will take this, Chris is on vacation this week, I will take this down to the police department tomorrow. My experience tells me that they are the best equipped to, in most simplistic terms, explain parking regulations to residents. We'll sort of redraft this based on the police department's input, and we'll use that moving forward.
Okay,
Fair enough?
thanks.
We should, Lorraine, too.
It's proper in the ordinance, I think it's just not conveyed as clearly as we might want it in the letter.
I think whoever typed it just typed, I think their eyes went to the wrong, they typed the same exact line.
Yeah,
Where
we'll
they
clean
should
it up, we'll simplify it, we'll make it easy to understand, we'll get PD's consent, and we'll move forward from there.
Okay.
Okay?
And I just want to say, I don't want you to usurp the deputy mayor's power and authority in proofreading. So let's, mind your manners.
Thank you.
All right, good.
Lorraine, too, I think this came in to CSAC through
Yes.
Ed Houlihan, and because he's been
Yes.
so involved and had such, this is his neighborhood, and Ed Houlihan is with the American Legion, and he wrote us a very, do you want to write him back? Because I think he'd be happy to hear it's moving forward.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, I will.
Okay, under budget, item 1, authorize the execution of a settlement agreement for a notice of violation for copper exceedance for the water pollution control facility. The memo here from Chris explains the situation. This is a first violation. This has to do with some drainage out of Graydon Pool, where they treat the pool with certain copper-based chemicals, and it was discharging into the sanitary collection system. They're in the process of making corrections to this, but we are obligated to make it right with the DEP.
How do we avoid this in the future?
Chris and Nan have worked on a plan as far as how they're going to treat the pool in order to try to minimize the discharge. I don't know the specifics of that plan, but I can certainly ask if you want more specific information.
It's all in the discharge, I think, treatment, indexation. Yeah, it's all in a matter of the way that the Graydon is discharged. The water from, is discharged into the sanitary sewer line. So it's just going to be a control aspect of discharge of the water from there. And I think the rains, I mean, I forget when this goes back to, but I think the violation is fairly recent, so
Yes.
I think it's just something they're going to take part. And again, this is the first time that it's happened, so.
Any objection? Okay.
Anybody? Good.
Item 2 is award of contract for the repair of a police vehicle. This is one of the Tahoes, Vehicle 19. We're going to contract with Midland Park Auto Body. We've been able to receive a quote. Just to remind the council on this, we did go out to bid multiple times. We had no bidders return proposals, so we are able to negotiate, and we've done so with Midland Park Auto Body. Any objection?
Nope.
Okay. Item 3 is the price quote for the 2024 Village Calendar. I want to thank Beth in my office for working to put this together. The low quote is Ridgewood Press for $16,050.
Everybody good?
That
Yeah.
includes mailing, right?
What's that?
That includes mailing?
No,
That's only the
that's
printing.
layout printing
Okay.
and distribution
The-
to the postal facility.
Okay.
So
But-
postage is additional. However, the ads pay for most of the calendar.
Correct.
It pays for about 78%. I did have a question about the calendar. Are we considering, in addition to the ads, of reinstating coupons? You know how we had the King's coupons for the $10 off, and people last year, no, I'm not, seriously.
I
people took
like
this
Well, that's
calendar
up
very
to-
I like the
seriously.
coupons.
That's up to
I
the
like
individual
coupons.
vendor or the
Okay.
individual advertiser.
So when we sell the ads, do we have an approach letter? Because when we digitized the calendar this year, I got, like, as you know, hundreds of comments that proved to me people love print. But one of them proved I was so wrong. One of the persistent comments was that the prior year's advertising had included coupons, and people thought that was very favorable. And so I don't know if do we send out an ad letter?
It's already gone out. We already have ads. So, yeah.
It's
Next-
done.
Next year for coupons.
Okay.
Well, and again, it's up to the individual
Yeah.
place if they want to offer coupons or not, so.
Everybody good?
Item 4
And
is,
Keith, before you get into this, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
It involves Downstreet Service, and I have a relationship with them.
okay. Item 4 is with regard to tree planting throughout the village. We solicited bids on Thursday, July 20th. There were 8 registered plan holders, 7 submitted bids. The bids ranged from $63,405 to $96,000. The low bid was Downstreet Service of Hawthorne, New Jersey, the amount of $63,405. The work is funded through the is funded through the 2023 capital budget, ordinance number 3951. Any objection?
How many trees? Oh, I see.
They're on this
That's
page.
total.
Yep. Got it.
Might have to do some quick math here.
It's something like 130, maybe 120. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. Just over 100? Okay. The next item is the award of contract for the radio console installation at the fire department. This is to be housed in one of our firehouses. This is the backup radio communication system from Central. Funding is available in the 2022 capital account to replace the radio console, and also from the 2023 capital, 130 from 22 and 55 from 23. Contract will be awarded to Goosetown Communications.
Questions?
What's a radio console and are we-
It's sort of the desk feature, the technology that goes into the desk in order to be able to dispatch from the firehouse. So if there was an issue at Central, we'd be able to have redundant backup at the firehouse to be able to dispatch any emergency services.
and what's engine 31? That the,
It's a small firehouse up at the top.
that's what I
line.
thought, but I wanted to confirm
Mhm.
that. Okay. So is there one there and one at the main firehouse? We're talking about 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next item, we reported during the manager's report at the last meeting that the fire department's been in receipt of $263,725.45 from the Department of Homeland Security to buy new breathing apparatus. This would just allow Bob to do the Chapter 159 to insert it as an item of revenue into this year's budget. It's a housekeeping item. We covered number 7. Number 8 is to rescind and replace Resolution 23-198, Creative Coping Toolkit. This is simply a housekeeping item as well. The business registration was changed for the name of this company, so it's a housekeeping item to ensure that all of the records as far as the company name are correct. Under policy, item 1, authorize membership in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Operational Services Division, contract PSC 01 cooperative pricing system. This is to meet the needs of some purchases from the fire department. We did question at one point joining a cooperative out of Massachusetts, but with some legal guidance that is permissible, so we can enter into this cooperative to bulk purchase.
All good?
Okay. Item 2 under policy, I will defer to Councilmember Reynolds, who requested that, and item number 3 be added to the agenda for this evening.
Hi. Okay, so Village Council meeting curfew at 11 PM. I know we talked about this. I'm not exactly sure when. I think we said, were we going to have a 3-month review and then go back? Or I don't even remember at this point. But I don't mind the 11 PM curfew, but only if it interferes with ending public comment. I'm against cutting off any public comment. So if we either have to agree to go past 11 o'clock and let everybody speak, or if we see that the meeting is running late with certain presentations or something, we have to take other things out of the meeting. We have to figure out a way to never cut public comment. It's just beyond my imagination that we could have people come here at 7:30, wait online, not get a chance to speak at opening public comment, sit through a 3-hour meeting, and then they still can't speak at ending public comment. We can't have that happen.
And just for clarity, we're talking about numbers D2 and D3.
They kind
collectively.
of,
Good.
exactly,
Yeah, I just wanna- yeah.
exactly.
Okay, good. Thoughts?
Well, you know what? I'd like to hear from our new manager what other towns do in terms of public comment. Do they have 2 sessions, beginning at the beginning and the end?
I think it varies, and I think that tradition prevails in many of these situations. I can tell you that in Elmwood Park, we had a very long public comment, but it was always at the end of the meeting. And there was no time limit. It went on indefinitely, and there was dialogue between the governing body, the professionals, and the public. That was a tradition that was long-standing in that community. In Parsippany, I believe it was agenda items only at the beginning of the meeting. So if there was something you wanted to comment about that was listed on the agenda, you were afforded that opportunity to do it at the start of the meeting. If you had general public comment about something that was not included on that particular agenda, that had to wait till the end of the meeting. And I think there was a 5-minute time limit there. In Woodland Park, we only had public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and it was limited to 3 minutes. The discretion of the chair prevailed in some of those cases if someone really needed to finish their thought. In fairness, there was not a lot of public attendance at those meetings, so there was a lot more flexibility. So I really think it's town-specific as far as how you want to proceed and what policies and rules you want to establish for public comment.
So I have a couple things, if I can. I was a little surprised to see this on the agenda, and I want to say, before we begin this, in order to have this conversation, I want all 5 of us to draw upon the same set of facts and it's really important to me, and I'm imagining Evan will echo some of this. One of the few good things that came out of COVID was hybrid access. For many in the community, single parents, working parents, the disabled community, of which I am a daughter, it was door opening, and it allowed our community to engage when I was a citizen with government. And as we all know, the prior council, of which there are several members here, suspended it with no reason. And in addition to that, we, the public, advocating for it, couldn't even get it back on the agenda for discussion. So I think it's a compliment to us that we're having this discussion. But during that time, the only people who advocated for public comment for all, including the disabled, were Paul and Pam. And I want to first say how grateful I am for that, and how I feel that 8 months ago, there was no public comment for all because we, as a community, turned our back on the disabled community. And part of that is because one of the reasons I was elected is, as the daughter of that community, it's very important that those facts remain, and the fact that we changed it is a good thing. But let's be clear, prior to Evan and I getting here, public comment was definitely suspended and not universally available to people in this community. And it was shameful and embarrassing, and I am grateful that upon taking office, Evan and I both put it on the agenda, and we now have it. With that, I think it's important to recognize that this village council, all 5 of us, have taken some really good steps, because good governance does rely on citizen engagement. Immediately upon taking office, we did several things. We improved the audio. We actually took initial public comment for those of us who have followed this, which was 40 minutes prior to us getting here, and extended it to the potential of 58 minutes with the hybrid access. Public comment used to be capped at 40, and it's now still capped, but closer to an hour. We moved the podium, we made it more friendly. Personally, I wrote and then tortured Matt Rogers with the Citizen's Guide to Public Comment. I think I also bothered Heather with it, but we implemented that. We allowed for council chat, and we moved public comment in a way I was very proud of. By law, I gave Matt some stuff. I think we're only required to have 1 public comment. Personally, I do not like that. When the idea of the curfew came up, I was not a fan of it. I think it was, late winter, early spring. But then when I was looking at it over the past couple months, we as employers, we have a responsibility to the wellness and safety of our staff. Forget how tired we are. And I can say for a fact, I have called Heather early to make sure she's gotten home. We have our IT staff, and I am seriously concerned when public comment is not limited, and presentations as well, because presentations should be capped, that we are putting employees at risk, sending them home tired. And I think all of us have a responsibility to the public, but also to our staff. And there's some case law, which I gave to Matt, on the duty of care. So personally, I think that, again, going to the teenagers, I say to my kids, nothing really good happens after 12:30, come home. And I would say to this council and our staff, not much great happens after 11:30-ish. So with that being said, I do want to say thank you to this council. I'm very happy with all the progress we've done. By law, we've always done more. But, initially not a fan of the curfew. I don't want to go home worried about our staff. And I think it's not just about the public being heard, which is super, super important, and we have all these new vehicles. It's also about, people who work for this village and have to get up the next day and perform. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I actually find myself in agreement very much with Siobhan as well as Lorraine. Clearly, if people show up, we should do everything in our power to give them the opportunity to be heard and to speak. But we have to have some discipline here, and this maybe is a bit of my private sector experience coming in. The idea of meetings that go on forever is not a good idea for a number of reasons. Couple points else, also in addition to what Siobhan pointed out. Bear in mind what the public doesn't see is very often we do have private session. Today we start at 6:45, sometimes we start at 6:30, sometimes we go afterwards where we have to discuss things that are in closed session. We have to keep the staff here for that. So you have situations where some of these folks are working a full day and then they're coming back for a 5-6 hour session at night, and then are expected to come into work the next day to execute on their duties. Keith, this is actually interesting. This is going to be one of the topics I was going to talk to you about when we meet and have our meeting. My concern really is more around efficiency, not just about limiting the time of the meetings. I really want to talk to you about, for instance, why if we're going to have public comment at the end, that's 5 minutes, but it's 3 minutes at the beginning. Could we perhaps go to 3 minutes at the end, and that way we get more people to have an opportunity to speak? I'm interested in talking about, no offense, Keith, but do we really need the village manager's report all the time? Could we do that written? I am not a hypocrite. I want to limit our council reports to 3 minutes, because if we're going to limit our citizens to 3 minutes, we should be limited to 3 minutes. I think these are all things we can do to try to compact the meeting so that we can get some more opportunity for people to be heard. But with that, the idea of having no end at, just saying we're going to be here until essentially people all have their say, it's unfair to the staff. I think it's also unfair to the citizens. Most people are not staying up past midnight to watch village council meetings. I think we have a duty to make sure that we get everything done within a reasonable amount of time, so people have to get up in the morning, take their kids to school, or go to their work, have the opportunity to see what's going on in the village. The optics of making decisions or hearing testimony or viewpoints at midnight when nobody is listening to me just sounds terrible. It feels awful. We need to be more transparent. We need to be more public, have more public involvement, and having meetings go past midnight, that's just not going to do it. In sum, I strongly support keeping the curfew. I think it's really instilled some discipline. I think we should find some ways to streamline things during the course of the meeting. I'll also point out this is not something that happens very often. There are some very high pressure meetings where we have something of particular interest where we do go long. That's the minority. Most of the time it's going to be like tonight, where I suspect we'll be out of here in another half hour, which is great because people watching at home can go to bed. So I don't think this is that big of a problem. It only happens infrequently. And moreover, if people are not able to be heard, and again, it shouldn't be happening that often, there is council chat. All of us have village emails. We all get emails, very, very regularly from citizens. And you can always come back the next meeting when generally you're not going to have an overflow. Like for instance, I know I missed the last 2 meetings. The first one I missed, that was the meeting when you had the issue. The next meeting was a fairly quick meeting, and people could come back and be heard then. And to Javon's point, even if they physically can't come, now they can even dial in. So they definitely have the opportunity to be heard, even if maybe wasn't that at the exact moment they wanted to be heard. But I think we need to keep the course here, just find some more efficiencies in order to make our meetings a little more impactful, to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and if it does, it's extraordinarily rare.
Thanks, Ev. Pam?
Yeah, this was one time where it didn't turn out as well as we might have wanted, and it usually is, we are more efficient than that. And I like Evan's idea of 3 minutes for council reports.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I know, Matt, you did some research on this about other towns in the area that might have a curfew.
Going back a few months, I probably looked at the ordinances for about 20 towns. Most of the towns that 20 was made up of the towns that surrounded Ridgewood, and also some other towns that we've been compared to, Summit, Madison, a few others like that. We are probably, we're not the exception, but we are one of the more open, municipalities that provide 2 opportunities and also provide hybrid as well as in person. And and when it comes to comparing us to other towns, that certainly is the way that if someone's looking at what we do, they would perceive us as being that way. Also, I've looked at some information with regard to some towns. Not many towns have curfews, but those that do, it's earlier than what we do. And they have it by ordinance. We do it by practice, and you leave it to discretion of the council. So, so certainly from the standpoint of what we do, we make a great effort to allow for public comment, more so than most communities, probably greater than 90% of them, and that's certainly the way that our approach has been. And again, when Keith had talked about traditions in municipalities, that's kind of been the tradition in this town as well, except recently with regard to the hybrid and in-person access that's being provided now.
Thanks, Matt. I want to comment on some of the points raised by Siobhan and Evan. Pam and I fought very hard to get hybrid access. We couldn't even get it on the agenda last year. And this council, in its very first act on January 4th, number 1 was hybrid access. And in doing that, we expanded public comment at the beginning of the meeting by almost 50%. We have also, at some of our meetings, said that we will begin them earlier, so that the goal here, one of the goals, is so that the people who are in their homes on hybrid access and watching on cable can hear what's going on. And as we know, after 11 o'clock, many people tune out. And we know this because that's the way television works generally. In that regard, the other part of public comment is to get the council to listen, to hear what you have to say. There are those of us who work in jobs that require us to get up early. It's a long day. And yes, we signed up for this. But if you want us to hear you, we need to be alert and ready to hear you. And one of the reasons I don't want to go beyond 11 o'clock is that I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear everything you have to say. I might not agree with what you have to say. I might not like what you have to say, but I want to hear it. Every single word. In that regard, at that meeting that's referred to, which was a few weeks ago, the curfew was 11 o'clock. Our meeting went to, and I remember it specifically, 11:08. And I said, let's go to 11:20 so that we give some people a chance to speak, and if everyone could make their points quickly so that we could move on. The 11 o'clock curfew has never been strictly enforced. Never once. Please go back to all your tapes. It has never been done. The 3 minutes or 5 minutes is never strictly enforced. We always give an extra 30 seconds or so, and we ask that you start to finish up. This curfew, by the way, is also waivable by a majority of the council. If a majority of the council wants to go beyond that, then we will go beyond that. I have spoken to Heather in the past about knowing that we were going to have a big public comment at the end. Can we move some of our items off of the agenda to a future meeting? You remember that? So that we can get more public comment in. And what she said to me is, we have village business that needs to be conducted. We need to buy that truck because we need that truck. We need to get that communication system because we need it. We need to conduct village business. I want to hear what everybody has to say. You may not think I do, but I really do. And there comes a point at which I'm just not as, and I admit it, I'm not as sharp at 12 as I am at 10:30. We all get tired, and it's about the staff, but it's also about the council. You want us to hear you. If you want us to hear you, we can't go much beyond 11 o'clock. It's a long day. Many of us start very early, and we're going to start very early the next day. So for those reasons, I don't want to expand public comment. I am actually in favor of having a 3-minute public comment at the end so that we can get more people in. And what I find is that there are those people who, because they have 5 minutes, feel a need to fill it. I have yet to see someone who can't make their point in 3 minutes. That being said, I understand how sacred public comment is. And I would not do that unless the entire council was in favor of it. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, so there's been many more than just one meeting. I mean, I can think of probably at least 4 since we came upon this, that the meeting has gone past 11, and several times we did take a roll call vote. That was the way it was supposed to be. I think in the beginning, we said if it goes on, we'll discuss it, we'll see if we allow more. At the last meeting where it happened, there was no roll call vote. It was just.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
that's number 1. Number 2, I think a couple of times, there were only 2 people left. So it just kills me that you don't allow 2 people to speak. It wasn't like there was a line and we were going to be here till 2 o'clock in the morning.
And just to jump in on that point, and sometimes there has been a line. In those couple of meetings, we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I don't ever remember a line, that,
Well, let's say
whatever.
there's been more than 2.
Okay, all right. So, number 1, I think we should have a roll call if we're going to end public comment early. Put it on the record, who's going to end public comment. I don't have an issue with ending from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. I agree, you should be able to get your point across in 3 minutes. That'll allow more time. But if it's our fault, like last time, it's our fault for not stopping the presentation, for letting it go on for an hour and a half. Those people did not get to speak because it was our fault. We need to do everything in our power to have a concise meeting and allow our residents to speak at public comment, because it's the most important thing. We have to listen to the public.
And in this discussion, I will take full responsibility for that, because I'm the chair. I should have limited that presentation by all means. Whatever it was, it could have and should have been shorter. I'm figuring this out as I go along. I agree with you completely. There should be a roll call at the end to determine if we're going to go beyond 11. And I know that, again, my mistake for not doing so.
Could I say something, though?
Let me just, and again, if you think that we are good with a 3-minute time limit at the end, I think that we should discuss that right now, because I think that that's far more efficient, and I'll throw in, I'll see ya and I'll raise ya, Evan's point that every council member needs to be kept to 3 minutes, and I don't care if Heather puts us on the clock.
No, she has to.
She has to.
Totally has to.
So I'm going to suggest
Yeah.
those things now.
Yep.
Is everyone in agreement with both of those changes to the way we conduct our, I mean, look, we moved it earlier. We're doing everything we can. Sometimes, I know, sometimes some people are a little long-winded up here. I'm not saying who. All right, there's a mirror. So what do you think? Is everyone in favor of both of those changes?
I am.
I am, and I will say for the council reports, some of us on the council are carrying more committees, and I would feel badly, not, I have to represent all of mine, and I have more than some. I think Pam has the same situation. I do think we should be capped and self-regulated. I think 5 minutes would be appropriate for council reports. I agree with the 3 minutes at the end, and I do think we need more enforcement on presentations in general.
I mean, I so have to say, I don't think we've had this happen, at least in the time I've been here, where a presentation has gone on as long as that one. And admittedly, Peter is not exactly, he's a long-winded. He was a bit long-winded. With that said, other than the budget, I don't think there's been a more important issue that we've been dealing with as a council than Shedler. We're paying an expert to come report on us to Shedler. We're using taxpayer money to hear his opinion. To limit him to only 15 minutes, especially given the amount of back and forth, I have to agree with Paul. I disagree with you, Paul. I think you did the right thing in terms of using your authority to give him more time. With that, we could have carved it down a bit, but I don't want I don't want somebody we're paying for their expert opinion on a critically important issue to be kept to 15 minutes. And while I want to hear from the residents, I also want to hear from the expert that we hired to be knowledgeable on the
I didn't
topic.
say anything about 15 minutes for
Right.
experts. I put that onus on myself.
Right, but we
to
could do-
say, to
Peter,
figure out
Cut
when
to the
to move it
chase.
along.
Yes.
And again, I could have and should have made that shorter, but I agree with you completely. We should not be saying, okay, whatever issue this is, this
Right.
person has to finish it in 15 minutes.
Right.
I think that's going to be left to the discretion of the chair, and just so you know, the only reason that I ultimately moved it along was because I got a very sharp elbow from my left.
with that though, I will respectfully disagree with Siobhan. I think I hear you on the committees. I still think 3 minutes is good. I can't say I'm going to die on that hill, but I like the idea of keeping it 3 minutes. If no other reason.
You are when I give you one of mine. There you go, dude.
I think, well, I'll tell you, if you want to pass me notes, I'll cede some of my time to you perhaps. But I like the optics and I like the logic that we only get to speak as long as any citizen does.
Yep.
Yep, I'm
And
okay with
Because
it.
I'm not any more important or less important than whoever's at that platform, whoever's at that podium.
I think that is so well said. Is everyone in favor of this?
I'll go with it. Yeah.
Good, then I think that this was a very useful discussion at our work session, because I think that we are, and as I said, I wasn't gonna do it if everyone didn't agree to it. But I really do believe everyone can make their point in 3 minutes, including those people on the dais. We're gonna make a slight exception for the village manager, who may have.
I was unoffended by Councilman White's inference that he's trying to quiet me down, and I haven't even been here a month yet, so it's okay.
So,
So how about a suggestion that the village manager limit, but of course, like I think this was a lousy time to bring this up. I thought, for instance, your comments today, which were long, were meaningful. Talking about milling and things like that, but,
I would like to sort of restructure my report to where the announcements are more put out through other means, whether it be e-news, social media, those types of things, where
great.
people would actually go to find out what time the concert starts. They're not going to listen to me
yeah.
on a rerun of this council meeting. They're going to go to
Our new website.
our new website.
I
and
think
get that
that,
info.
I think that,
together.
I think that everyone is moving forward on this. Good. So that is our new policy going forward.
Do we have to do anything, Matt?
I think there are ordinances that deal with
Yeah.
I think one of our ordinance does deal with the amount of time that can be used for speaking public comment at the end of the meeting. So I think we have to just take a look at that and see if there's anything else that we need to just shore up to follow along with this policy. And don't forget, you could revisit it in 6 months and always make any changes or adjustments that you want.
So if it's an ordinance, then we have to go through the process of changing the ordinance
Yeah.
before it can take effect. So it will be
Yeah.
5 minutes at the end.
For the next 2 months,
Yeah, fine.
till September, I suppose.
Good. Great.
Can we discuss it, since we discussed it now, can we vote on it next week to introduce the ordinance?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
take a look and get the ordinance together, and if we
Great.
can do it, you can introduce it.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for bringing it up, Lorraine.
You're welcome.
Moving on to operations.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to operations, seeking a resolution to authorize Verizon to place small nodes in various locations. In this case, it's Linwood Avenue and East Ridgewood Avenue. This is a low-power antenna that would be at the subject locations. Installation would be in the public right-of-way. These would be the third and fourth such installations in the village. The previous council in 2016 approved 2 other locations. The engineering division will be sending out letters to residents within 200 feet of the installation, advising them of what is occurring. This is common across the state. This is just improving the infrastructure of Verizon throughout the municipalities.
This isn't 5G, is it?
don't
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
No,
Verify that tomorrow, but I don't believe so.
I don't think it is. Other questions?
Okay. And for items 2 and 3, I'll defer to Heather,
Okay.
their clerk-based items.
Okay, the one is for the alcoholic beverage amendment. One is the term of license and payment of fees. It'll be changed to indicate that all renewal fees must be paid prior to the renewal of the liquor license. And usually I determine a date so that the council then has time to vote on it in June in order to renew it by July 1st. The next section is license entitlements and fees. It indicates how many retail consumption liquor licenses there are. And the issue becomes that that can vary. And whether it's an increase in population or if liquor license lapses and maybe it's not sold. So we're not going to put any number in at all. And we're actually over licensed for consumption liquor licenses based on our population. The next one is the plenary retail distribution licenses. Again, we're over licensed. And so therefore, we're just going to take out the number of licenses. So it's pretty easy fixes. It was brought to my attention that this was in the ordinance, which I didn't even realize because it was done, I think, in the early 90s. And so therefore, I think at this time, we just take it out.
Great. Questions, anyone?
Okay, the next item is our 2024 Village Council meeting dates. We're doing this now so that we can discuss it, but also so that it'll be ready for the bid packets for the minutes as well as for the calendar. So January 3rd is the first Wednesday of January. We'd like to change it to January 10th and then move all the other meetings forward 1 week. So it would be the 10th, the 17th, and the 31st. There happen to be 5 Wednesdays in January. This way, both for our staff as well as for all of you, we're going through a holiday week, the week before, and whether or not you really have time to review it between Christmas and New Year's is questionable. So the recommendation is to put it on January 10th as our public work session, the 17th is the public meeting, and the 31st is the second public work session. February, March, April, May, June are all the normal, the 1st, the 2nd, and the 4th Wednesdays. July 3rd is actually the first Wednesday of the month. At the end of the day, we clear out this parking lot. They start setting up the fireworks. It's, for us to be here till 9, 10 o'clock at night, the night before July 4th, we have an early meeting at 8 o'clock for the flag raising the next day. So I figure we'll change it to 7/10, July 10th for the public work session, and then the public meeting will be July 17th.
Makes sense.
August, September are the same, the usual. So the first Wednesday of the month in October is actually the first night of Rosh Hashanah. So the recommendation is to move it to the Monday. We move it to Monday because Tuesdays there are meetings here in the courtroom. So we'll move it actually to September 30th, which seems strange, but in order for us to get our 2 work sessions in, that's how we'll do it. And then that was the end. That was the only change. So the majority of them are the usual. Those that are different, they will be in the calendar, and they will be, so people will know. So as long as you're okay with these, and then also I just wanted to say that the Coffee with the Council, which is an annual date for new residents to come in and meet the council in an informal setting, would be September 7th, which is right after Labor Day, which is normally when we have it on a Saturday. So as long as you're okay with these dates, then we'll go forward with them.
Makes sense to me.
Looks good.
Okay.
Great.
Could we ever move to 2 meetings a month? Do you think we would ever be able to get everything
Then we would be
done?
going till 1 a.m.
I think it would be tough, maybe if Keith and I work together, I just don't know. It would be great, other towns have done it, it's just that there's then a lot that needs to get done in one work session meeting. If there are some towns, actually, everything that's on the agenda, the council just approves it, they don't discuss it, they just say, okay, thank you, and move on. And that's not how it works here, which I like this, the council has input, and the council, gives their opinions. But I think we have a lot of business, and we're a larger town than a lot of the other towns in Bergen County. So, I don't know. Keith and I can discuss it. I don't know how, because we do. We have 2 meetings in November, December, and July, August. We're very fortunate, this August, it isn't that long. Usually July and August, November, December, those meetings are very, very long, both the work sessions and the public meetings, so.
So Heather might remember this. A while back, we looked at MAWA. Remember so MAWA does the work session intermission voting meeting, and then that's what and they bang it out. But they're long, and there are problems where it becomes controversy in the work session, and then it becomes complicated. But if you look at MAWA's schedule, you'll see how they do it, and they actually call it intermission, which I found rather hilarious.
Except a lot of those towns who do that, they know what's going on in their public meeting,
Right.
because there's not discussion, it doesn't change. A lot of these things that we discuss, things change, the ordinance isn't what you want, the resolution,
Yeah.
you want it changed, I always ask them, how do you do it? And they say, well, they just listen to us and they just say, okay. And I'm not saying, and I'm not asking you to do that, because I think the give and take is very important.
It is, and I meet with the mayors in this area once a month. There's about a dozen of them. And when I told them how long our meetings were, they laughed. They thought I was kidding, because many of them, their meetings are, I'm not exaggerating, 15 minutes. 15 minutes in and out. And so the longest was Saddle River, which was an hour and a half at the outset. Now, I was going to propose 2 meetings a month with a 9 o'clock curfew, but I'm gonna let that go for now. So.
And also, it's one thing, and again, it's so timely, because I was gonna bring this up with Keith when we meet on Friday. It does strike me that, especially for some of the public sessions, there's a lot of pro forma stuff we do, and I don't know, maybe talking to Matt, see what's legally required and what's not legally required, especially because, listen, the dirty little secret for everyone is that if it makes it to the session to vote on, it means we all agree on it. Otherwise, it's not going to come on. So, there's very, occasionally, you may have one council person who wants to make a statement because they disagree, but most of that stuff, generally, we've already agreed to in the work sessions. And I guess, maybe putting it out there, Keith, there's a way to restrict some of that, because then maybe we can do, can have a public meeting with some work stuff at the end if the work section was, other way around. We could have a work session with some public meeting at the end if the public meeting was truncated and had less of that pro forma of just us going yay, nay, having to read everything into the record, when it's a little bit of a dog and pony show to me.
Well, we did do consent agenda, which is really consolidating all those resolutions. Back in the day, you had to read the resolutions in full, every single one of them.
Now you just read the header.
Now you just got to read the title.
But even that, again, from a legal, we need to do what's legally required, but it's printed out in front of us. Everybody has access to it. Again, we've already discussed it in the work sessions.
Yeah, but
It's legally required.
people haven't heard it.
Right.
So we read it by title so people are aware, and that's why the consent agenda allows us to get the bulk, but the ordinance require the actual individual reading.
Yes.
And then I do just want to say, we don't always agree, and that's why sometimes things come off, resolutions will be defeated, and sometimes, this hasn't happened yet, but you want to make, even if it's going to fail, I think there'll come a time where you want people to stand with their no vote, which didn't happen in the past. And I think that's pushing, we will all be left with because the public's listening, with the unfortunate decision that there might be a vote that people want on record just for the sake of it. Because far too often in prior councils, it died in work session, and then the public was confused because it never went to a vote. And I personally, I like the no vote. If you're voting no for something, you should be proud of it, and I would personally want to push to have that recorded if it was something I was passionate about.
No, that makes sense, but I'm wondering if there are instances where we know going into it, we all agree. There's a way to cut down the pro forma for that. I agree. If there's an issue where somebody wants to make a statement with a no vote, or make a statement when voting yes, by all means, we should not cut that down. But that's not the majority of the time. And again, I'm going to defer to Matt in terms of what's legally required, because I don't want to run afoul of that. But it does feel that there may be some pro forma stuff. There's a way to cut down, and I would, while still preserving the right for the council to make a statement on a yes or no vote.
Just from that comment, before I got here, this is a pretty well-oiled ship. It ran pretty, it follows the requirements of notices with regard to ordinances, and the only place you can really save time is on the consent agenda. I think, and I know we've talked about this before, as a council, you've talked about it before, is just trying to be efficient with regard to comments and discussions and that and the like. And this town has much more on its agenda, more items, more issues, more projects that it's looking at than, I also represent one of those towns that finishes everything in 15 minutes. So I look forward to one of them. I can't remember which one, but no, it's very much different, but they still follow the same approval and discussion process that we follow. It's just that we've got so much more to do.
So, and with that, let's move on to our last item.
The last item are late additions to the village council agenda, and that too was asked to be placed on the agenda by Councilmember
Thank you.
Reynolds.
Nothing drives me crazier than Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, looking at my email and seeing many additions to the agenda. I really think we have to have a cutoff, because as we can't be expected as council people to leave every Wednesday open for us to spend 5 hours looking at our council packet and any new additions that have come in. So my suggestion would be like Monday at 2 p.m. and nothing comes in after that.
I find myself agreeing with you far more frequently as time goes on. And as I recollect, when I came on the council, and I'm sure that I've contributed to violating this practice, but it was Friday. We said Friday was going to be the cutoff. And there would have to be, and what I'll say is that it should remain at Friday, because again, we all have, we want to come in well prepared, and sometimes you get something on a Tuesday and you just don't have time to review it.
Sometimes I come in and
Sure.
I don't even know.
Yes.
I'm like, I didn't look at my email yesterday. I was busy, you know?
And what I will say is, it needs to be Friday, and I will leave it to the discretion of the manager and the clerk that it would have to be something of an emergent nature, and few and far between to go anywhere beyond Friday. Does that sound like it's a workable way to go forward?
It does. What I was going to say is that we put things on the agenda and we don't have the backup yet. So it is on your agenda, it's just you don't have the backup. So if you want to say, absolutely, we will definitely enforce it. And we do have a Friday cutoff, actually. And so we can certainly do that. And if we don't have it by then we'll say it's not going on.
I think that's the way it has to be, because, again, and, we all have lives and jobs. And so, if the backup comes in and it's a 3-page memo, and, we just don't have the time
You
to
don't have
get to it,
time,
then we
right.
can't make an informed decision.
Okay?
Does that work for everybody?
Yes, I do want to say that we need to be careful that we don't want to make rules that we're not going to stick to it. And I do think there have been some situations where there's been errors or things that need like a discretion, which would be.
Tonight was,
Yes.
Yeah,
don't mean to
which-
interrupt, but tonight was a good example
Right,
where
because we
it
needed
was,
to do
it was
this.
simply a clerical issue,
Right.
but it needs to be fixed. So, I think to have some discretion where maybe, we might have the opportunity in a very simple situation like
Agreed.
that to defer to the mayor, yay or nay, before we put it on. That might help us just from a housekeeping standpoint.
Yeah.
And if it's here, either an emergent matter or something that is so non-emergent that it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
A clerical error.
Which the late starter that happened today
Exactly.
would
Right.
clearly fit that definition.
Absolutely. So again, we're not making this a hard and fast. We're making this a, let's avoid it
As much as
wherever
possible.
possible.
Agreed.
Okay.
Like a clerical funding.
Everyone in agreement?
That concludes our portion of the agenda, Mayor.
Great. And so now, we will go back to public comment.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. First, I'd like to just thank Keith for coming out to the neighborhood, to the east side. It was like a million degrees out, and he came in a suit, so kudos to you. We really appreciate it. We talked about the footbridge. So we had neighbors congregate from that neighborhood, from, Kingsbridge, and also then we walked over to Shedler and gave you some, I guess, background context, as to what our concerns are. I followed that up with an email, and I think we have some open questions, but at least we have a dialogue, and we're talking about transparency, which is, the utmost importance. A little earlier this evening, you were talking about the committees, Green Ridgewood, Shade Tree. Some of these committees, I've had the pleasure to join and listen in on some of the meetings. One in particular is the Historical Preservation Committee, and I'd just like to quickly read the open letter that was sent to the mayor, actually hand-delivered on Monday, and also to the council, and Keith as well. So it said, past officials of Ridgewood, duly elected by the residents of Ridgewood, chose to seek state and national register status for the Zabriskie Shedler House. Due to the history of the house, the property and the construction of the house, that status was granted. Regardless of what you personally feel about the wisdom of the decision, it is a done deal involving the county and the state as well as the people of Ridgewood. Throughout its history, major decisions of this council, including the purchase of the present Village Hall, have met with controversy and even lawsuits. However, elected officials have made decisions that benefit Ridgewood in the long run. That's how democracy works. Instead of looking for drastic and expensive solutions that would negate the actions of previously elected officials, it would make more sense to accept the compromise worked out with all parties previously to develop the park with a smaller field, which was the 2017 plan. The preservation specialist that you hired gave you the answer that you wanted to hear, but not a reasonable one. Joe and I are your appointed municipal historians, and we have not been consulted by any of the parties involved. The historic significance of the property is outlined in the nomination form. Regarding the property itself, there is an abundant documentary evidence that 150 British soldiers marched down what is now West Saddle River Road in 1780 to engage in a battle at the site of the old Paramus Reformed Church. It is hard to imagine that this did not involve the property now occupied by the Zabriskie Shedler House. As a village, we need sports, we need passive recreation, we need trees, and we need to protect our historic resources. So we urge you to look at development of the property with all of these things in mind. If you have any questions about the historic nature of the house or property, please contact us. Sincerely, Peggy W. Norris and Joe Saplicki, municipal historians of the Village of Ridgewood. So I believe, Evan, you are the liaison for the Historic Preservation Committee. I've attended that meeting with Ellie Gruber. I think you have an amazing group of people. They are calling themselves the municipal historians of the Village of Ridgewood. They are passionate and dedicated. No one has been consulted. And when you talk about Mr. Primavera being an expert, we still are waiting for some kind of substantiation as to what his expert credentials are, because he's not a licensed architect, he's not a licensed engineer, and he's not a licensed planner. In order to talk about moving a house or delisting property from being historically significant, he would have to prove to some of us, or all of us, that he is an expert and has these qualifications. I believe Denise Lima earlier this evening brought to light many of the things that he has said that he has participated in that have proven not to be correct. So I do implore you to do some further due diligence, check references. You've already paid him almost close to $7,000. I read his summary that he put together that was in the transparency binder the night he was here, and he's going to come back for more and more, money, and it's going to be very costly. So if we're paying him as an expert, I'd like to better understand what his expert credentials are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Bob Furman, 49 Clinton Avenue. I was very happy to see the agenda addition regarding public comment. As far as the curfew is concerned, please don't take it the wrong way, but listening to the five of you for 3.5 hours is enough time for me, okay? So I think you're doing a disservice by dragging this on longer and longer. As you can see, there's not a big audience here right now. Regarding public comment, and I think this is important, public comment, 3 minutes, I think is wonderful. Public comment should be a short story, not a novel. It's also public comment, not public question and answer. Okay, people come up here, myself included, I don't deserve an answer. I'm making a comment, you can comment or not comment, and then I go and sit down. I think that's important. One thing I would caution you regarding the council members' reports. We all know that certain council members have a load of committees and others have pretty much next to nothing. And as a volunteer on those committees for the last 10 years, if we have a meeting, that meeting deserves to be reported to the village residents. So some people may need 2 minutes and others may need 10. So I would implore you to maybe limit the council reports to a total of 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, but it's going to have to be spread out. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Hi, I'm Niti Mistry, 416 Colwell Court. I'm here to talk about the Glen Sidewalk project. I don't have all my thoughts together yet because I'm still processing how we went from like 100,000 to now potentially 1.2 million. I'm not complaining. I'm happy that the budget is expanding. I think we definitely needed to do that. I definitely did not think 100,000 was enough. I don't know if I believe 1.2 million is necessary. It does seem a little excessive. And there's probably ways to bring that number down, in my opinion. I think Jovan talked about the wider driveways as a needed accommodation, and I just want to point out they're actually wants, not needs. Like no one needs to do that. It would be nice, but it should not factor into the budget, especially if it's going to make or break this project moving forward. Some of the concerns, I am on a text thread with some of the local residents in the Glen neighborhood. Some of the concerns is this a way to, the pushing the project to next year? Is this, is it kicking the can on this project? And I'm not saying it is, but there is some feeling of that, what are the guarantees? Are there any guarantees that this is going to get done? Because these are real concerns about safety. And someone did mention potentially breaking up the project into two. And in my opinion and in my experience, I don't live on Glen Ave, but I live in the neighborhood, so I do walk that regularly. The most critical part is the 100 feet of woods that Jovan was talking about. That's the most dangerous stretch. It has no shoulders, has no sidewalk. And if you're going to do anything, I would say please clear those trees because there's zero visibility. So if you could clear those trees, figure out how to deal with that because that actually isn't in anyone's front yard. So if you're going to do anything at all, I would, implore you to start there. And that's about it for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nidhi. And we have 2 people on hybrid access. First one is Susan. You're up. You're momentarily on mute. And there you go.
Hello?
Yes, hello, we can hear you.
All right, hi. Hold on. That's right. Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I want to begin by thanking Keith for meeting the residents on the east side regarding the footbridge in Shedler. It was an extremely hot day, and he graciously came out. I also want to thank the Village Council for their lengthy discussion tonight regarding the paving of West Glen, as well as remembering to include the funding to repair the footbridge in the discussion. I'm looking at all the paving projects, street paving projects throughout the town, which are great, but West Saddle River road is a disaster. And we've been here for over a decade, and it's been that way since we moved here. It either has potholes or filled potholes. Drivers immediately know when they left Hohokus and entered Ridgewood because it's bump, bump, bump after each other to greet them. And yesterday I was driving also in New York City and had to take the RFK Bridge. I joked to my husband that the potholes on the ramp remind me of West Saddle River Road. And finally, I Googled the cost of moving a historical house to a new location. You know, one Google search mentioned it'll cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, you know, in an article regarding a historical house in York, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, the beginning cost to move a historical house there was $250,000. Peter Primavera suggested moving the Shedler house, which will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in funds and take away from what I fear, what paving West Glen and fixing the footbridge. So I advocate that be very much investigated because those funds are needed for much critical projects. Thank you for your time and have a nice night and get home safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Rurik, you're up. And you're on mute.
Mute.
There you go.
Rurik Halaby, 1 Franklin Avenue. First, I want to compliment Paul on the really classy way in which he thanked the various village employees that were involved in the Graydon Pool situation. Cindy and I have lived in Ridgewood for 54 years, and one of the reasons we love living in Ridgewood, we love Ridgewood, are the wonderful people who staff Village Hall. And Paul, you did such a classy way of thanking them. Thank you very much for doing that. Then as far as Oak and East Glen, I kind of agree with Evan. That to me is an awful intersection, especially that the village dropped the ball on Glenwood, and that diverted so much traffic to East Glen. And frankly now, when I find myself driving north on Oak, I only take a right on East Glen. And if I need to head west on East Glen, I take the longer route of going up Maple than taking a left at the light, which brings me to the idea that maybe there should be a light there, which also makes me think that we have the worst set of lights in Ridgewood of any town I can think of. I mean, for one thing, the intersection of Franklin and North Maple. I mean, as a pedestrian, I can never cross there. I never know, which light is red and which light is green. And I really would like to suggest to Keith Kasmark that he sit down with the engineering staff to take an inventory of all the lights we have in Ridgewood. What do we have? Where do we have them? For instance, the intersection of Maple and Linwood does not have a pedestrian lights. I don't know what you call those, to show you walk or don't walk kind of a thing, which is kind of crazy. Also, it's high time. I mean, we like to pride ourselves in America as being the leader in technology, but when it comes to street lights, we're way behind. I mean, we're way behind. In Europe, you have all these so-called intelligent lights. For instance, you can have an intelligent light at the intersection of Oak and East Glen so that the light will not change if there's only traffic coming one way. If it starts building up the other direction, then lights start changing. So I really think we should just sit back and have a good study made of the traffic lights we have in Ridgewood. Lastly, as far as the curfew, I was kind of amused by Lorraine Reynolds when she was the one who voted against the hybrid meetings and kind of cried and said it's time to return to normalcy. Well, Lorraine, guess what? this is the new normalcy, to have curfew, which is to have these hybrid meetings, which means basically you're attracting so many more people to express themselves. And frankly, as a recipient of more points of order than any other resident in Ridgewood, I can tell you in the last 6 months, people are more welcome to express themselves to the village council, and the village council is so courteous in listening to comments that are being made. When I, as a listener, would say, "My God, this is nonsense. Paul just shut them up." But no, Paul doesn't shut them up. He just listens. So, frankly, I think there should be a curfew because you cannot go on and on and on. And if you can have 3 minutes in the front and 3 minutes at the back, and in case of an emergency or really important things, you can always change that. So anyway, I want to thank the Village Council for doing such a great job in the last 6 months. And as a village resident, I'm very, very happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rourke. Kevin, you're up next. You're on mute, Kevin. There you go.
Hello. I first would like to thank the Village Council for bringing up the West.
Please state your name and
Glen.
address. Name and address.
Kevin Wen, 147 West Glen Avenue. Again, I'd like to thank the council for bringing up the West Glen sidewalk project onto the agenda again. But today I'm actually quite confused by the direction that this budget is going, because I was at the few meetings before, and I think we went from about 100,000 project to somewhat 750,000 at the previous meeting, and now today we're talking about a project of 1.2 million, which is higher than all the previous estimates. So I'm actually quite confused by the direction of this is going. I understand that the mayor wants to do, sort of like a Cadillac project, as he phrased it. But I think, realistically, with the tight budget, as you all mentioned, I think realistically we could really, do a, I don't know, Toyota Camry or even Toyota, what's that called, Corona project instead of a Cadillac. I think the most important thing is to actually, get the project started instead of, postponing and, looking for different money coming in to fit in the gigantic budget. Some of you also mentioned about dividing this West Glen sidewalk into two parts, basically one from the intersection of South Hill Heights and Glen to Alpine, and then another section from Alpine to the Monroe. I actually agreed to this idea because if you get the sidewalk sort of completed from, South Hill to Alpine, you would have for the entire stretch, right, on West Glen, all the way from South Hill to Monroe, you would have a complete walkable sidewalk from end to end, even though you do have to, cross West Glen in the middle of the road. I think that's okay. I live in one of the houses with the dreaded ditch in front of our house. And I understand from the meeting that, this belongs to the federal government, and there's really nothing the village or the county can do, I guess. So for me to use the sidewalk that we're talking about, I have to cross this, the West Glen anyway, right? So I don't mind that at all, as long as there's a safe sidewalk to walk, walk on. And I don't mind crossing, walk a bit and cross back to the other side of the West Glen again, just to use the sidewalk. I think it's really critical to have to get the project started. again, instead of, postponing. Also, I heard, I believe, is the new village manager piece, and maybe some of the council members talked about, having a resident meeting and to discuss this project. And I really look forward to having this meeting with you guys in the very near future. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Kevin. Seeing no one else, I'm going to close public comment. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say before we go to adjournment?
I do. With respect to West Glen, because I don't want there to be confusion, upon arriving here, Evan and I were given no detail on the project. During the budget, the dollar amount that came forward was $1 million for this capital year. It was a line item of $1 million. It was scratched at that point solely on funding. At that point, I partnered with Councilwoman Reynolds, and I said, what's going on here, right? Because Evan and I had never seen anything. Between 2015 and 2019, $100,000 had been spent on West Glen on the easiest part, before the slope. So the $100,000 spend occurred actually before all of our arrivals. The budget line item for this year was $1 million. At that point, the concept of removing the retaining walls and taking a bulk of the cost, because the walls are the most expensive, brought the project down to like 3 and change. So I want to be clear, because I know the West Glen residents are listening. It has for the completion and the part of this project, because of the grade, it was never $100,000 for this section. It was $100,000 spent to date, and the ask this year was $1 million. So the versions that we're seeing now are based upon things. So I hope that clarifies. It didn't go on this discussion of capital for that.
I just want to clarify one thing. Last year, there was a significant amount of sidewalks on Glen, so it was last year.
Okay.
It wasn't that long ago.
The funding was like for the capital. That was the document I sent you. But prior to this, this year's capital ask was $1 million. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not going from this watch from 100 to $1 million. The second point that I want to make is that West Saddle River Road is a county road, and we are doing a bulk of the paving now, and I'm sure West Saddle River will be looked at. And lastly, while I understand, and I will be responding to Peggy Norris, 2 things about the letter. While we have spent less than $10,000 on Peter Primavera, the project itself has spent $250,000 on an outside consultant with Connolly and Hickey. So we have a history of being reliant with historical projects on historical consultants. And 2, when we discuss Shedler, it's still, and Matt said I could say this, very disappointing to me that we're not getting to the future intended use of the house. So we talk a lot about the house, whether the idea it should be moved, and for me, it's a conundrum because we spent $2.6 million on the house, and there's so much dialogue about where to place the house, what to do with the house, and we are still in the situation where there is no use of the house. And the use of the house is going to have implications on the neighborhood. So I will be replying back to the email. I needed to check some things with Matt. But when we talk about the house, it would be very helpful to me if the neighbors participated or gave ideas of what we're going to do with the house, because it will be a traffic generator. And that's it. Sorry.
Anyone else?
I would be more than happy to be the recipient of those suggestions relative to the house. I mentioned that I did a tour with our engineering department. It was the first time I was able to step foot in that house. While there has been a considerable amount of funding utilized to make upgrades, it is without insulation, it is without a shower. The space inside is tight for larger events. So, I do think that there is going to be a considerable amount of brainstorming that is going to need to happen with what the permanent use is of that house, regardless of where it stands.
And that's a conundrum we will deal with on another day. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.